I had spent 3 years pretending to be ordinary, and it had been the most peaceful 3 years of my life. That peace ended when my younger sister stole my name, my achievements, and the last clean shirt I owned. I woke up that morning on the roof of our ruined estate, with a loaf of bread on my chest and a book covering my face. The western tower had no roof, the eastern tower leaned whenever the wind changed, and the front gate only stayed upright because I had secretly duplicated the same rusty hinge 200 times and stacked the copies inside the wall. To everyone else, our family was finished. We had no money, no influence, and no servants. To me, it was perfect. Nobody visited. Nobody challenged me. Nobody asked me to save anything. Then I noticed the house was too quiet. My sister Lila was noisy even when she was asleep. She argued with blankets, kicked doors, burned breakfast, and practiced victory speeches in empty hallways. That morning there was no shouting, no smoke, and no sound of furniture breaking under experimental magic. I sat up, looked down through the hole in the roof, and saw a note pinned to the kitchen table with one of my old silver knives. The note said she had gone to the Empire's strongest magic academy. Under that, in much smaller writing, she apologized for borrowing my entrance recommendation, my childhood exam scores, my family seal, my research notebook, and my name. She had underlined the word borrowing 3 times. I stared at the note for a full minute. Then I looked at the empty shelf where I kept my sealed academy invitation. The invitation had been sent to me 5 years earlier after I accidentally solved a magical equation that had remained unsolved for nearly a century. I was 12 at the time. I had only solved it because the symbols looked uneven, and I wanted them to line up. I had ignored the invitation because the academy sounded exhausting. Lila had apparently decided to accept it for me. Technically, she had not enrolled as me. Even she knew that pretending to be a boy several years older would be difficult. Instead, she had used my achievements as proof that our fallen family still possessed a genius bloodline. She had claimed that I personally trained her, signed my name as her sponsor, stamped my seal on the application, and submitted several pages of my old research as examples of the education she had received at home. That was bad. What made it worse was that she had probably bragged about it. Lila could not carry a bucket of water without telling the bucket that it was lucky to be carried by someone related to the legendary Adrian. I was annoyed, but not worried. The academy was far away. Lila was talented enough to survive ordinary classes. She was reckless, dramatic, and unable to whisper, but her instincts were excellent. I decided to let her enjoy herself. I repaired the kitchen wall with duplicated bricks, made 6 identical breakfasts from 1 egg, and returned to the roof. 3 days later, a paper bird crashed into my forehead. The bird unfolded itself and projected an image of Lila standing in the academy's central arena. She was surrounded by hundreds of students. Across from her stood a boy with black hair, a bright red uniform, and the kind of smile rich people practiced in front of servants. His name appeared beneath the projection. Damon. Rank 7. The message attached to the bird explained that Lila had challenged 3 high-ranking students in one afternoon, insulted the student council, claimed that her brother could defeat every professor while half asleep, and accepted a duel against Damon scheduled for the end of the week. The final line said the duel allowed serious injuries. I folded the message, then I unfolded it to make sure it had not changed. It had not. I sighed so hard that the loose western tower finally fell over. I could have sent Lila a warning. I could have appeared at the academy as myself, dragged her home, and spent the next month repairing everything she broke while escaping. But if I entered as Adrian, the academy would remember the invitation I had ignored. Professors would ask questions, nobles would demand demonstrations, researchers would beg me to examine their theories, powerful students would challenge me every morning. My quiet life would be gone. So I decided to enter without being Adrian. That afternoon, I stood in front of a cracked hallway mirror and created a new face. My magic was called duplication, but that description was far too small. I could duplicate objects, spells, force, sound, motion, distance, and even the result of an action if I understood it well enough. When I was younger, I had copied a candle flame and nearly set the clouds on fire. After that, I learned control. I duplicated the shadow under my chin and spread it across my features. I copied the gray color of the kitchen ash and placed it in my hair. I duplicated the rough texture of an old coat and wrapped it around a perfectly good uniform. I made myself look slightly shorter, slightly thinner, and completely forgettable. For my fake name, I chose Reed because it was written on a broken tea box near my foot. I left a duplicate of myself sleeping on the roof so any visitor would think I was still home. The copy could breathe, snore, complain about sunlight, and throw bread at birds. It could not think independently, but that was fine. Most visitors did not require advanced conversation. The academy sat on a mountain above a city made of white stone. 7 enormous towers surrounded a central fortress, and floating bridges connected everything in the sky. Students crossed those bridges on flying boards, summoned beasts, or glowing platforms. Giant crystals displayed the top 100 ranks above the main gate. Lila's name was not there yet, which meant she had not caused enough trouble to become famous. I considered that good news. The gate examiner looked at my worn coat, my cheap bag, and my transfer request. I had written the request on the back of a bread wrapper during the trip. He asked what kind of magic I used. I told him basic magic. He asked which element. I told him whichever one was nearby. He stared at me for a long time and assigned me to the lowest transfer test. The test took place in a courtyard behind the first tower. Nearly 200 students gathered to watch because low-rank transfers were apparently a form of entertainment. The instructor placed 10 stone targets in a row and told me to hit one with a basic wind spell. I raised one finger. The students laughed before I even cast. That was reasonable. My coat looked like it had lost a fight with a chimney. My mana felt weak because I was duplicating an empty space over my core, making every detector read almost nothing. The target was 50 steps away. A beginner's wind spell could barely shake the grass at that distance. I released the smallest possible gust. It traveled 5 steps and faded. The laughter grew louder. Then the duplicated gusts arrived. I had copied the spell every time it crossed the distance between 2 blades of grass. 1 gust became 2, 2 became 4, and 4 became a line of invisible blades. By the time they reached the first target, there were more than 16,000. I did not let them hit all at once. That would have been suspicious. Instead, I arranged them into the shape of a giant hand and flicked the target. The stone target flew across the courtyard, bounced off the second target, knocked over the third, and started a chain reaction. All 10 targets launched into the air. I duplicated their upward momentum, then their rotation, then the sound of the instructor gasping. The targets spun above us like a row of stone moons. I lowered my finger and let them fall into a perfect stack. The courtyard became silent. I shrugged and said the wind was stronger than expected. The instructor did not believe me, but he could not prove anything. The spell circle had been basic, the mana reading had been basic, even the original gust had been basic. Everything after that was simply a large number of very small accidents. The academy placed me at rank 999, the lowest position on the active board. That was exactly what I wanted. Then I found Lila in the dining hall, standing on a table while telling 30 students that her brother could duplicate a dragon using a chicken bone. I had never done that. I had used a fish bone. She looked almost the same as when she left home, except her academy coat was covered in dual badges, and one sleeve was smoking. Damon sat near the window with several high-ranking students. He watched her with an amused expression, like someone waiting for a glass to roll off a table. I walked past Lila and sat beside her. She glanced at me, saw a poor transfer student, and immediately moved her plate away as if poverty might be contagious. I asked whether the seat was taken. She said it was reserved for someone important. I asked who. She said her legendary brother might visit at any moment. I looked at the empty chair on her other side and almost laughed. Lila continued bragging. According to her, I had defeated a Thunderwolf at age 6, invented teleportation at age 8, and once rejected a marriage proposal from an entire kingdom. Only one of those was true, and the Thunderwolf had been asleep. Damon finally stood and walked toward the table. He told Lila that her duel had been moved to that evening. He had decided waiting until the end of the week was boring. The dining hall became quiet. Lila's confidence flickered for half a second, but she lifted her chin and accepted. I studied Damon while pretending to butter bread. His mana was dense and sharp. He specialized in compression, forcing ordinary spells into small points until they struck like siege weapons. He was not rank 7 because of his family. He was genuinely dangerous. Lila could block 2 or 3 attacks. The 4th would break her defense. The 5th would break something more important. I could have stopped the duel immediately. Instead, I smiled. Damon had moved the match without official approval. He had also brought a hidden attack crystal in his sleeve. The crystal contained enough fire to turn the arena floor into glass. He clearly planned to humiliate Lila and make the injury look accidental. People like Damon were easiest to punish when they believed they were in control. I finished my bread, stood, and asked if low-rank transfers were allowed to watch. Damon looked at my coat and said anyone could watch a disaster. He had no idea how correct he was. The central arena was built to survive advanced magic, which meant it was almost strong enough to survive me being careful. Hundreds of students filled the stone seats. Floating crystals recorded the duel from every angle. The official referee had not arrived because Damon had moved the match early, but that did not bother him. He stepped onto the platform, raised one hand, and declared that Lila had already accepted the conditions. Lila walked out with a confidence she had borrowed from someone much stronger. Probably me. I sat in the lowest row and watched Damon activate the attack crystal inside his sleeve. He had connected it to his own fire spell, so when he released the spell, the crystal would multiply it. A normal observer would only see a powerful attack. If Lila was injured, Damon could claim he had misjudged his strength. That was clever enough to be irritating. I decided to make it educational. The duel began with Lila launching 3 ice spears. Her control had improved since leaving home. The spears curved from different directions and aimed for Damon's blind spots. He compressed a fire shield into a thin red line. All 3 spears shattered at once. Lila followed with lightning. Damon stepped through it. She used stone chains. He burned them. She created a wall of water, froze the surface, and sent the whole thing sliding across the arena like a frozen wave. That was not part of any standard curriculum. She had copied the idea from one of my old notebooks. For one hopeful second, I thought she might actually surprise him. Then Damon pointed at the wave and compressed a spark. The spark became a needle of white fire. It pierced the ice, crossed the water, and exploded under Lila's feet. She flew backward and rolled across the platform. The audience shouted. Damon smiled. I duplicated the force of Lila's final roll and placed it under her shoulder. The extra motion turned her just enough to avoid landing on her neck. She stood, but her left arm shook. Damon raised his hand again. The crystal in his sleeve glowed. This was the attack meant to end the duel. I could have erased the fire. I could have frozen time around the spell, duplicated the distance between Damon and Lila until they were effectively miles apart, or replaced the arena with a copy while moving everyone outside. Those options were flashy, but they would reveal too much. So I used a beginner spell. I flicked a crumb of bread into the air and cast the smallest wind pulse possible. The crumb drifted toward the arena. I duplicated the crumb 40 times, then duplicated each copy again. A cloud of bread dust crossed the platform just as Damon released his fire. Flour dust was surprisingly explosive. Bread dust was less effective, but I had duplicated its dryness, its surface area, and the tiny pocket of oil from the butter. Damon's white flame touched the cloud. The air exploded in front of him. His hidden crystal overloaded. The blast launched him upward, burned away one sleeve, and revealed the illegal device spinning through the air. Every recording crystal captured it. The audience saw the crystal. The students saw the crystal. The academy guards rushing into the arena saw the crystal. Damon hit the platform and tried to crush the evidence with a compressed stone spell. I duplicated the crystal before his attack landed. 1 crystal became 8. 8 became 64. Dozens of identical illegal devices scattered across the arena floor like red candy. Damon stared at them. The guards stared at him. I leaned back and pretended to be shocked. Lila, who had no idea what happened, pointed at Damon and announced that her brother's luck protected her from far away. That was so ridiculous that several students believed it. The guards took Damon away for questioning. He was released before midnight because his family was powerful and nobody had been seriously injured, but his dual privileges were suspended for 7 days. More importantly, the recording crystals showed him using a hidden weapon. His reputation cracked. Lila's reputation improved. By breakfast, students were calling her the girl who survived Rank 7's forbidden attack. She told them she had planned the bread explosion. I sat across from her, eating one of the rolls involved in that plan. She still did not recognize me. My disguise did more than change my face. I duplicated the way strangers looked past me. It was not mind control. I simply copied small, forgettable details from ordinary people and layered them over myself. The posture of a tired worker, the voice of a bored traveler, the expression of someone waiting for rain to stop. Lila saw the disguise and assumed there was nothing underneath worth examining. That would have been perfect if she had not decided to befriend me. She said I had good timing for a low-rank nobody. Then she asked whether I wanted to become her assistant. I asked what an assistant did. She said I would carry her books, save her seat, cheer during duels, and listen to stories about Adrian. I told her that sounded terrible. She said the position was unpaid. I told her that made it worse. She hired me anyway. My first class was basic spell structure. Professor Rowan taught it. He was tall, thin, and looked permanently disappointed by the existence of chairs. He drew a standard fire circle on the board and explained that a spell became unstable if the inner lines were placed incorrectly. The circle he drew had a flaw. It was tiny. One angle was wrong by less than a degree. Most mages would never notice because the spell still worked. It simply wasted a little mana. I noticed because the incorrect angle made my teeth hurt. I kept quiet. Rowan demonstrated the spell. A small flame appeared above his hand. He asked the class why the flame leaned to the left. Several students offered complicated answers about air pressure and elemental temperament. Lila said the flame was intimidated by her brother's reputation. Rowan ignored her. Then his eyes moved to me. He asked the lowest-ranked transfer student for an answer. I said the third inner angle was wrong. The room laughed. Rowan stopped smiling. He checked the circle, then he erased one line and drew it again. The next flame stood perfectly straight. The room became quiet. Rowan asked how I noticed. I said the chalk squeaked differently. That answer was technically true. Incorrect geometry changed the mana vibration, which changed the chalk's sound. It was also completely useless to anyone who could not hear mana vibration. Rowan decided to test me. He drew 10 spell circles across the board. 9 were correct. 1 contained a hidden flaw. I pointed to it before he put down the chalk. He drew 20 more. I found 3 flaws. He layered circles on top of one another until the board looked like a nest of glowing wires. I found every mistake. The class stopped laughing. Lila leaned toward me and whispered that her brother could do the same thing while sleeping. I almost told her that I had done it while sleeping. She had once placed a spellbook under my pillow and asked questions until I answered without waking up. Rowan was not satisfied. He summoned a training sphere and asked me to repair its damaged spell matrix. The sphere had been used by advanced students for years. It contained thousands of connected lines. Several were broken. I placed one finger against it and duplicated the undamaged half. The repaired pattern spread through the sphere like ice across a window. The machine activated, rose into the air, and began firing practice bolts. Unfortunately, I had copied more than the pattern. I had copied the sphere's stored charge too. The first bolt hit the wall hard enough to leave a crater. The second split into 12 because the duplication matrix was still active. The third chased Rowan around the desk. Students screamed and ducked. Lila climbed onto her chair and cheered. I stepped forward, caught one bolt in my palm, duplicated its backward direction, and sent every bolt back into the sphere. The training machine swallowed its own attack, glowed bright blue, and dropped to the floor with smoke curling from its shell. Rowan looked at the crater, the sphere, and me. I said the equipment seemed old. He assigned me detention. Detention took place in a sealed practice room below the second tower. Rowan placed a stone cube on the floor and told me to move it using only the weakest version of 4 basic spells: wind, water, fire, and earth. He expected the task to reveal how I had manipulated the training sphere. I expected to finish in 10 seconds. Then I noticed Serena watching from the upper gallery. Serena was the Academy's student council leader and rank 1. Students called her the monster of the White Tower. She wore no armor, carried no staff, and never raised her voice. Her magic controlled vectors. She could turn attacks, reverse momentum, redirect gravity, and make someone fall sideways until they crossed the horizon. She had come because the training sphere incident triggered a high-level alert. I could not show too much in front of her. Rowan told me to begin. I used wind to push the cube. Nothing happened. I used water to make the floor slippery. The cube moved half an inch. I used fire to heat one side and earth to raise the other. The cube slid another inch. Rowan frowned. Serena looked bored. Then I combined the failures. I duplicated the inch of movement and placed the copies one after another. The cube did not appear to accelerate. It simply skipped across the room in tiny jumps. Each jump was so small that the observers saw a single smooth motion. The cube crossed the practice floor, climbed the wall, moved across the ceiling, and returned to its starting point. I stopped it exactly where it began. Rowan asked what spell I had used. I said 4 basic spells. Serena's eyes narrowed. She dropped a coin from the gallery. The coin fell toward my head, then suddenly changed direction. Her vector magic sent it sideways at the speed of an arrow. I bent down to tie my shoe. The coin missed me, hit the cube, and punched through the center. I looked at the hole. Then I looked up at Serena. She asked whether I had dodged by accident. I said my shoe was loose. She dropped another coin. This one curved. I sneezed at exactly the right moment and leaned out of the way. A third coin came from behind me. I opened my bag and the coin flew inside. A fourth ricocheted off 3 walls. I moved the cube to demonstrate the slippery floor, and the coin struck the cube again. Serena watched every accident happen. Her expression did not change, but I felt the pressure in the room sharpen. She knew. Not everything, but enough to be interested. That was bad. Rank 1 students did not become less interested when ignored. After detention, Serena blocked the hallway. She asked for my real name. I told her Reed. She asked why a rank 999 transfer could see invisible vectors. I said I could not. She asked why I moved before each coin changed direction. I said I had sensitive feet. She stared at me for several seconds, then stepped aside. Before leaving, she told me she would be watching. I had been at the academy for less than 1 day. I had protected Lila, exposed Damon, broken a training machine, impressed Rowan, and attracted Serena's attention. My quiet infiltration was going extremely badly. The ranking board made it worse. The academy awarded points for class performance, duels, trials, and monster hunts. Repairing the training sphere should have earned 10 points. Surviving the malfunction earned another 20. Identifying Rowan's flawed circles earned 30. By evening, my rank jumped from 999 to 712. Students noticed. The next morning, 12 low-ranked students challenged me at once. They thought my rise was a mistake. They believed a poor transfer had stolen points meant for someone else. The academy allowed group challenges if the lower-ranked student accepted, and Lila accepted for me before I could speak. She said it would be good experience for her assistant. I considered revealing my identity just so I could ground her. Instead, I entered the practice court. The 12 challengers surrounded me with staffs, swords, floating spellbooks, and summoned creatures. None of them were important enough to deserve names, but together they created a respectable amount of noise. The match began. I cast one basic earth spell and created a pebble. The challengers laughed. I duplicated the pebble. Then I duplicated it again. Within seconds, the court filled ankle-deep with identical gray stones. The swordsman slipped first. His weapon flew into the air and landed between the horns of a summoned beast. The beast panicked, ran into 2 spellcasters, and knocked them into the water barrier. Another student tried to burn the stones, so I duplicated their heat resistance. Someone froze the ground, so I duplicated the rough surface of 1 pebble across the entire court. Every attempt to gain control created a new problem. I never attacked anyone directly. I simply kept adding pebbles. The stones rose to their knees, then their waists. A wind spell launched hundreds into the air. I duplicated the sound of each impact until the court thundered like a collapsing mountain. The challengers lost track of one another. Summoned creatures chased rolling stones, spells collided. One student accidentally tied himself to a flagpole with his own binding rope. When only one challenger remained standing, he raised both hands and surrendered. I snapped my fingers. Every pebble vanished except the original. The court was undamaged. The challengers were bruised, confused, and buried in their own mistakes. The ranking board flashed. My position rose to 530. Lila ran into the court and shouted that I had clearly learned strategy from stories about her brother. I looked at the single pebble in my hand. Then I looked at her. She smiled proudly, still completely unaware. I began to understand that keeping my identity secret might be harder than becoming rank 1. The academy did not allow students to remain unnoticed after winning 12 duels with 1 pebble. By lunch, people had created 3 explanations for me. The first was that I possessed a hidden legendary artifact. The second was that Rowan secretly gave me points because I was his lost relative. The third was that I was weak, lucky, and about to be crushed by someone important. The third explanation was the most popular because Damon had returned. He walked into the dining hall with a new uniform, a bandage around one wrist, and twice as many followers as before. Losing reputation had not made him humble. It had only made him quieter. He ignored Lila, ignored me, and sat at the far end of the room. That was how I knew he was planning something. Lila did not notice. She was busy explaining that her brother once defeated a sea serpent by convincing it to swallow its own tail. I had actually defeated that serpent by duplicating its hiccups until it became too embarrassed to fight, but I did not correct her. She dropped a stack of class papers in front of me and announced that I would help her study. I asked why she needed help if her legendary brother had trained her. She said he had trained her spiritually. I asked what that meant. She said he slept while she practiced nearby. That was completely accurate. Lila's problem was not talent. She had plenty. Her problem was that she treated every spell like a dramatic entrance. She used too much mana, made every movement wider than necessary, and always chose the loudest solution. If asked to light a candle, she summoned sunrise. If asked to cool a drink, she froze the cup, the table, and occasionally the person holding it. I wanted her strong enough to survive without me, but I could not train her as Adrian, so I offered to show her a few tricks I had learned from watching low-level workers in the city. She looked offended. Then she failed the same control exercise 6 times and agreed. The exercise required moving a drop of water through 10 metal rings without touching the sides. Lila kept blasting the drop through the first 3 rings and losing control at the 4th. I told her to stop pushing the water and pull the empty space ahead of it instead. She said that made no sense. I told her most useful things sounded stupid before they worked. I demonstrated with a weak water spell. The drop passed through all 10 rings, looped around the room, divided into a tiny flock of birds, and landed back in the cup without spilling. I had not meant to create birds. My duplication magic sometimes became decorative when I was bored. Lila stared at the cup. I told her it was a cheap street trick. She immediately claimed her brother had invented it. For the next hour, I trained her using methods no professor would approve. I made her balance sparks on falling feathers. I forced her to freeze only the shadows of ice cubes. I had her catch sound inside soap bubbles and release one syllable at a time. Each task looked ridiculous, but it taught control faster than repeating circles on paper. Lila improved quickly. That pleased me more than I expected. At home, I had hidden most of what I knew because every time I showed her something impressive, she tried to copy it at full power. Once, I duplicated a staircase to reach the attic. She duplicated the idea and created stairs through 3 floors, the pantry, and a horse that had been standing outside. After that, I stopped demonstrating advanced magic around her. Now I could teach her as Reed, the unimpressive transfer student. She listened because she believed the tricks were small. She did not try to prove she was related to me. She focused. By the end of the session, she moved 10 drops through 100 rings while standing upside down on a floating chair. Then the practice room exploded. The blast came from beneath the floor. A red compression line cut through the stone, struck the far wall, and shattered the room's safety barrier. Damon's signature was hidden inside the spell, but only barely. He had not attacked us directly. He had fired into an abandoned conduit connected to the practice rooms, knowing the redirected force would cause a malfunction. The ceiling collapsed. Lila reacted before I did. She used the control exercise. Instead of trying to block every falling stone, she pulled the empty spaces between them into a spiral. The rubble curved around us like water around a rock. Not one piece touched her. I was impressed. Then a broken support beam dropped toward her blind side. I duplicated the beam's distance from the floor. For one instant, the space beneath it became 100 times longer than it appeared. The beam fell and fell without getting closer. I stepped under it, tapped the wood, and copied its stillness. It froze in the air. Lila turned and saw me holding one finger beneath a beam that weighed several tons. I quickly let it fall behind me. She asked what happened. I said it got stuck. She accepted that because the academy's buildings were old. Rowan arrived seconds later. He examined the broken conduit, the compression scar, and the destroyed barrier. He knew the blast had been deliberate. Serena arrived after him, looked directly at me, and asked how 2 low-ranked students survived a room collapse without injuries. Lila raised her hand and explained that her brother's training had prepared her. Serena asked whether her brother was present. Lila said no, but his influence was everywhere. Serena looked at me. I looked at a piece of rubble. Rowan ordered everyone out and closed the practice wing. He did not accuse Damon because the evidence was hidden inside the conduit, but I could read the spell residue. Damon had compressed his mana until it resembled background noise. He was learning from his mistakes. That made him more dangerous. It also made the game more interesting. That evening, the Academy announced the first field ranking trial. Students would enter the Blackwood, a monster forest surrounding the mountain, gather crystal cores, and return before sunrise. The number and quality of cores would determine ranking points. Teams of up to 4 were allowed. Damon registered alone. Serena registered alone. Lila registered both of us before asking. I considered refusing, but the Blackwood provided Damon with too many places to arrange an accident. If I stayed behind, Lila would enter anyway. So I packed bread, rope, a small knife, and 1 empty bottle. Lila packed 12 spell scrolls, 3 emergency crystals, 2 changes of clothes, a frying pan, a banner with our family symbol, and a portrait of Adrian she had drawn from memory. The portrait looked nothing like me. It had broader shoulders, sharper eyes, and enough hair to survive a hurricane. It also appeared to be glowing. I asked why she needed it. She said inspiration. I asked why it had no shirt. She took the portrait away and told me to respect legends. At sunset, nearly 500 students entered the Blackwood through separate gates. The forest was filled with magical beasts, shifting paths, and old ruins used for academy trials. Each team carried a crystal that recorded its progress and sent an emergency signal if broken. The moment our gate closed, Lila charged toward the loudest roar she could hear. I caught the back of her coat and pulled her into a bush. A giant boar made of bark thundered past. 6 students chased it, throwing fire and lightning. The boar carried a valuable green core, but attacking it directly was inefficient. I waited until the group disappeared, then picked up an acorn. I duplicated the smell of the boar's favorite food and placed it on the acorn. Then I duplicated the acorn into a trail leading toward a ravine. The boar returned less than a minute later, following the scent. It reached the edge, stepped on a patch of mud I had made extra slippery, and fell into a deep pool below. It was not injured, it simply became stuck with only its head above water. Lila looked over the edge. I lowered a rope, pulled the core from the creature's wooden back, and replaced it with a harmless duplicate that would dissolve after the trial. She asked whether that counted as defeating it. I said the rules only asked for the core. She said her brother would have fought it directly. I knew that was false because I was her brother, and I had just used an acorn. We continued deeper into the forest. I avoided large groups and targeted monsters with useful weaknesses. A flock of metal-winged birds attacked from above, so I duplicated the magnetic pull of Lila's belt buckle. Every bird changed direction and stuck to her waist in a spinning silver ball. She screamed, ran into a tree, and knocked them unconscious. A swamp creature hid beneath black water, so I duplicated the reflection of the moon and placed 50 false moons across the surface. The creature attacked each reflection, became dizzy, and tied its own tentacles into a knot. A fire lizard guarded a crystal cave, so I duplicated the cool side of one stone across the entire cavern. The lizard curled into a comfortable ball and fell asleep. By midnight, our bag held more cores than most teams collected in a week. Lila decided this was proof that we made a perfect team. I said it was proof that monsters were easy to confuse. She said cleverness ran in her family. I nearly walked into a tree. The forest became more dangerous after midnight. The academy barriers opened the inner region, releasing stronger beasts. Students hurried toward high-value targets. Distant explosions lit the sky. The ranking crystals above each team began projecting temporary scores. Serena was first, Damon was second. We were 38th. Lila saw the board and became offended. We had dozens of cores, but most were low-level. She pointed toward the inner region and said we needed something huge. A roar answered her. Trees bent away from a creature moving through the forest. It had 6 legs, a body covered in black crystal, and antlers that scraped the lower clouds. The academy called it a disaster elk. Its core was worth enough points to move a team into the top 10. 30 students surrounded it. Damon stood at the front. He had chosen the beast carefully. The disaster elk stored force in its crystal armor. Every attack made it stronger. Students blasted it with spells. The armor absorbed the impact, and the creature released the stored energy in waves. Trees snapped. Students flew through the air. The more they fought, the worse it became. Damon waited while everyone else charged it. Then he compressed the reflected force into a spear and aimed for the core. It was a good plan. He had used the other students to fill the armor, then turned the released energy into his own finishing attack. The problem was that the elk's core was not where he thought. Black crystal distorted magical senses. The bright point in its chest was a decoy organ. The true core was hidden in one antler. Damon's spear struck the false core. The disaster elk became furious. It released every stored attack at once. The forest turned white. I grabbed Lila, duplicated the calm air inside my empty bottle, and poured it around us. A clear sphere formed just before the shockwave arrived. The blast split around the sphere, carving 2 trenches through the forest while leaving us untouched. When the light faded, students were scattered among broken trees. Damon remained standing behind a compressed shield, but blood ran from one ear. The elk lowered its antlers toward him. This was the moment I could have let him suffer. He had attacked the practice room. He had tried to injure Lila in the arena. He had used other students as fuel for his plan, but the elk would not stop with Damon. It would crush everyone nearby. I stepped out of the clear sphere. Lila grabbed my sleeve and asked what I was doing. I told her I was going to use another street trick. The disaster elk charged. I held up the empty bottle. Inside it, I had one copied moment of still air. I duplicated that moment and released it beneath the elk's front hoof. The creature stepped into stillness. Its legs stopped while the rest of its body continued forward. I copied the stop to the second hoof, then the third, then all 6. The elk froze mid-charge. Its stored momentum had nowhere to go. I duplicated that momentum, turned it upward, and placed it beneath the creature. The disaster elk launched into the sky. It rose above the trees, above the academy towers, and high enough to become a black dot against the moon. Every conscious student watched it disappear. Then gravity remembered it. The elk began to fall. I could not let a mountain-sized animal crash into the forest, so I duplicated the distance between it and the ground. The falling creature appeared to slow, though its speed never changed. It descended through layer after layer of stretched space, giving me time to prepare. I picked up a dead leaf. I duplicated its softness across the entire clearing. The ground became flexible without changing appearance. When the disaster elk finally landed, the earth bent like a giant mattress. The creature bounced once, floated upward, and came down gently on its side. It was unconscious. The students were silent. Damon stared at me from behind his broken shield. Serena stood on a distant branch, watching with a focus that made the air feel sharp. Lila looked at the sleeping elk, then at the empty bottle in my hand. I told her the bottle had contained a powerful sleeping gas. She asked why the elk flew into the sky. I said it was startled. She believed me for almost 3 seconds. Then the antler cracked, and the true core rolled onto the ground. Damon moved first. He compressed the space beneath his feet and shot forward. I had expected that. I duplicated the core's rolling motion and gave it to every loose stone in the clearing. Hundreds of rocks suddenly rolled in different directions. Damon changed course, but the real core vanished among the copies. Lila dove into the moving stones and grabbed one. She held it up triumphantly. It was not the real core. I had already placed the real one in her bag. The trial crystal flashed. Our score jumped from 38th to 6th. Lila stared at the board. Then she threw both arms into the air and shouted that her brother's teaching had produced another miracle. Damon's expression became colder. He knew I had done something. He could not understand what, and that was beginning to bother him more than losing. The disaster elk woke sooner than expected. Its armor had absorbed the bounce. Black crystal spread across its body, and the creature rose with a roar that shook leaves from every tree. The trial should have ended once the core was removed, but this beast had developed a second reserve inside its spine. That was unusual. Then I saw the red lines beneath its armor. Someone had planted compression crystals inside the creature before the trial. Every time students attacked it, the crystals forced more energy into its body. Damon had not simply chosen the elk. He had prepared it. The creature turned toward Lila because she carried the core. Damon stepped backward. He wanted the elk to attack us. If we survived, he could claim it was part of the trial. If we failed, the forest would hide his involvement. I decided I was finished being subtle. The elk charged again. I reached into Lila's bag, took the true core and duplicated it 1,000 times. Crystal spheres filled the clearing. Every copy carried the same mana scent. The elk stopped, confused by 1,000 identical targets. I threw the copies into the air. They rose in a glowing spiral, forming a second galaxy beneath the clouds. The elk looked up. I snapped my fingers. Every false core released a basic light spell. 1,000 beams connected in the sky, drawing the outline of an enormous cage. I duplicated the cage's downward pressure, layered it across the elk, and forced the beast to its knees. The ground cracked, black armor screamed. The hidden compression crystals began to overload. I pointed at Damon. Then I moved the duplicated mana scent from the cores onto him. The elk's eyes shifted. Damon understood immediately. He ran. The creature tore free of the light cage and chased him through the forest. I did not allow it to catch him. I simply let it get close enough to destroy every hiding place he chose. He jumped behind a boulder. The elk shattered it. He climbed a tree. The elk uprooted it. He created a compressed barrier. The elk used the stored force from that barrier to knock him across a stream. The recording crystals followed everything. Most importantly, the hidden red devices inside the elk became visible each time its armor cracked. The evidence Damon had planted inside a monster was now chasing him in front of hundreds of witnesses. Serena appeared beside me without making a sound. She said the elk's target had changed too perfectly to be an accident. I told her monsters were unpredictable. She said the 1,000 cores were also unpredictable. I said I carried extras. She looked at my empty bottle, my cheap bag, and the sky full of glowing crystal copies. Then she asked whether Reed was even a real person. For the first time, I did not have an immediate joke. Before I could answer, the elk cornered Damon against a cliff. He released his full power. Red lines covered the cliff face, stone compressed into a single spear longer than a tower. He launched it through the elk's chest. The hidden crystals exploded. The blast tore open the cliff and revealed an ancient stairway descending beneath the forest. Cold air rushed from the darkness. The disaster elk collapsed. Damon fell near the opening. Students began cheering because they thought the danger was over. I did not cheer. The stairway had not been part of the trial. Something beneath the forest had felt the explosion. Something enormous moved in the dark. A hand made of black stone reached up through the broken cliff, grabbed the unconscious elk, and dragged it underground. The trial crystals all went blank. A voice echoed from below, not speaking words, but repeating one clear magical signal. It was calling for the person whose seal had opened the path. My seal. The family seal Lila had used to enter the academy. The moment the signal echoed through the forest, Lila's academy badge lit up. A line of silver fire traced our family symbol across its surface. The same symbol appeared on the ancient stairway. It was not reacting to me directly. It was reacting to the seal she had submitted during enrollment. A seal copied from my invitation and carried inside the Academy's registration magic. Lila looked at her badge and whispered that this was probably bad. I told her that was the smartest thing she had said all week. The ground collapsed, the cliff, the clearing, and everyone still standing on it, dropped into darkness. I grabbed Lila with one hand and duplicated the upward pull from the disaster elk's earlier flight. The copied force slowed our fall. Serena turned gravity sideways and landed on the wall as if it were the floor. Damon formed a compressed platform beneath himself. Rowan arrived through a burst of blue light just as the opening sealed above us. He had entered the forest when the trial crystals failed. His teleportation spell found the strongest concentration of student badges and brought him directly into the falling cavern. Unfortunately, several dozen other students fell with us. I duplicated the soft ground from the clearing and spread it across the cavern floor. Everyone landed on stone that behaved like a giant cushion. Students bounced in different directions. One hit the ceiling, came down again, and landed in a pile of glowing mushrooms. Another continued bouncing until Serena redirected his momentum into a wall of moss. Nobody died. That was the good news. The bad news was waiting at the end of the cavern. A doorway taller than the Academy's central tower stood inside the rock. Hundreds of carved figures covered its surface. They showed mages holding identical weapons, identical shields, and identical flames. At the center stood a figure wearing our family symbol. Lila stared at the carvings. She said our ancestors had clearly been amazing. I told her our ancestors had clearly been irresponsible. The signal came again. The enormous door opened 1 finger's width. Cold mana poured through the gap and extinguished every light spell in the cavern. Then the monsters arrived. They were not soldiers, beasts, or copies of people. They were long creatures made of layered stone, with too many joints and hollow circles where faces should have been. They crawled through cracks in the walls and moved toward the student badges. Each creature ignored ordinary mana and followed the Silver family signal coming from Lila. Rowan ordered the students to form a defensive ring. Serena changed the direction of every charging creature and sent them crashing into the ceiling. Damon compressed the broken stone into blades and fired them down the tunnel. Lila created a rotating wall of ice. The other students added fire, wind, chains, and summoned weapons. The cavern became a storm. The creatures kept coming. Every time one broke, the pieces continued crawling. A shattered arm became a smaller creature. A broken leg twisted into a stone insect. The more violently the students attacked, the more enemies they created. I recognized the design. The monsters were not alive. They were security constructs made from modular spell blocks. Each block had one instruction: move toward the seal. Destroying the shape did not destroy the instruction. I walked to the front of the defensive ring. Rowan told me to get back. I picked up one broken stone finger. The instruction inside it pulled toward Lila. I duplicated the pull. Then I reversed one copy and attached it to the cavern wall. Every construct turned at once. Thousands of stone limbs, bodies, and crawling fragments rushed away from the students and piled against the wall. They climbed over one another, trying to reach the false signal. I duplicated the wall's hardness, spread it over the entire pile, and fused the constructs into one enormous block. The battle ended so suddenly that several students continued casting for a few seconds. Fireballs struck the block. Lightning bounced around the cavern. Someone's summoned hammer flew past my head and buried itself in the floor. Rowan stared at the fused mass. He asked what I had done. I said I moved the target. He asked how. I held up the stone finger and said it was magnetic. Serena looked at me like she wanted to throw me into the ceiling and see what excuse I made while falling. Damon said nothing. He was watching Lila's glowing badge. I noticed. The doorway opened wider. Behind it stretched a city beneath the mountain. Black towers rose around a bottomless central pit. Bridges crossed empty air. Blue flames burned in windows. Far below, something moved around the pit in slow circles, large enough to make the entire city tremble. Rowan ordered everyone to remain in the cavern while he searched for an exit. The doorway closed behind us. Apparently, the ancient builders did not respect instructions from professors. Silver lines appeared across the floor, forming paths toward the city. Lila's badge released a beam that pointed to the tallest tower. The family signal wanted her to go there. Damon stepped closer to her. I stepped between them. He looked at my poor coat and smiled without warmth. He said the lowest ranked transfer was becoming very protective of someone else's sister. I told him I disliked seeing useful people damaged. Lila asked whether that meant she was useful. I said she carried snacks. She accepted the compliment. Rowan tried teleportation again. The spell circle appeared, folded, and returned him to the same spot facing the opposite direction. Serena sent gravity upward, attempting to reach the sealed opening. The distance above us stretched and looped. She rose for several seconds and landed behind herself. The underground city distorted movement. It was not reacting to us. It had been built that way. Every path folded toward the central tower, guiding anyone carrying the family seal deeper inside. There was only one sensible option. We followed the path. I left a duplicate of our group standing in the cavern. The copies looked convincing from a distance and continued arguing about what to do. If more constructs arrived, they would attack the decoys first. I kept the duplication hidden beneath a darkness spell, but Serena glanced back once and saw the shadow figures moving. She did not comment. That worried me more than a question. The first bridge crossed a hole without a visible bottom. Halfway across, stone masks rose from the railing and released a scream that turned sound into physical force. Students were thrown backward. Rowan created barriers, but the sound passed through solid mana. Serena redirected the force into the pit, but every scream came from a different direction. I covered my ears. Then I duplicated the moment of silence between two screams. Silence spread across the bridge. The masks opened their mouths, but no sound emerged. I had not stopped the spell. I had simply filled every instant with a copy of the quiet gap. The masks continued screaming into perfect silence while we walked past. Lila thought the ancient defenses had become afraid of us. Damon knew better. At the second bridge, blue flames fell upward from the pit. They did not burn skin. They burned memories. One flame touched a student's sleeve, and he forgot how to walk. Another passed through a summoned creature, and the creature forgot the command holding its shape. It dissolved into smoke. Rowan tried to shield the group, but the flames consumed the memory inside the spell circle. His barrier forgot that it was supposed to exist. I could not let the fire touch Lila. She stored half her magical control in instinctive memories. One spark could erase years of practice. So I gave the flames too much to eat. I duplicated a useless memory from that morning, the exact pattern of crumbs on my breakfast plate. I copied it 1,000,000 times and released the memories over the bridge. The blue fire surged toward them. For several seconds, the entire pit glowed with images of breadcrumbs. The flames consumed copy after copy, becoming so full of meaningless detail that they slowed and turned pale. We crossed while the ancient defense struggled to process breakfast. Sharina walked beside me. She asked why she suddenly remembered a plate she had never seen. I said everyone thinks about food when nervous. She asked why the crumbs formed a perfect map of the western tower at my estate. I realized I had duplicated more detail than intended. I told her I had seen a similar plate in a travel book. She did not believe me. Damon listened from behind us. That became important at the third bridge. The third bridge had no defense. It looked ordinary. No masks, no flames, no visible spell lines. That made it the most dangerous. I tossed a pebble onto the surface. It landed safely. I duplicated the pebble and tossed 10 more. All landed safely. Rowan examined the bridge and found nothing. Serena changed gravity around one stone. Nothing happened. A student stepped forward. The bridge opened its eyes. Thousands of black eyes appeared beneath the transparent surface. The student froze. His shadow separated from his feet and dropped through the bridge. A second later, his body began turning into glass. Ranum and copied the shadow of the railing. I placed the copy beneath his feet. The bridge accepted the replacement shadow and stopped the transformation. Everyone backed away. The bridge demanded a shadow from each person who crossed. Without one, it turned the body into a transparent statue. We could not fight it with ordinary magic because the bridge was part of the city. Lila suggested jumping. The gap was nearly half a mile. Damon said he could compress the distance for himself, but not for the whole group. Serena could redirect gravity, but the city folded long trajectories back toward the bridge. Rowan could teleport only within the same point. I said I had an idea. I stood beneath one of the blue street flames and duplicated my shadow. One shadow became two. Two became four. Soon hundreds of identical shadows covered the road like dark paper. I attached one to each student. The copied shadows moved with them, stretched with them, and satisfied the bridge. We crossed safely. Halfway across, Damon stepped on the edge of my shadow. He was testing it. The shadow reacted with my mana signature. His eyes sharpened. He had seen the same signature hidden inside the duplicated monster cores in the forest. He now knew the tricks came from me, not Lila's badge or the city. He still did not know I was Adrian. That made him bold. The path entered a district of empty black buildings. Every door opened as Lila passed. Inside were rooms filled with old magical tools, cubes that held weather, jars of frozen lightning, books made from metal leaves, and weapons designed to split one spell into armies. Lila wanted to touch everything. I made her hold both hands above her head. She complained that I was acting like her brother. I told her someone had to. Damon disappeared while we crossed the district. I noticed immediately, but I pretended not to. His mana trail moved through a side street and entered a building filled with ancient compression devices. He believed the city's tools could give him enough power to control the situation. I let him continue. People like Damon rarely learned from warnings. They learned from consequences, preferably public ones. We reached a circular plaza beneath the central tower. The silver path ended at a stone pedestal. Lila's badge pulled toward it. Rowan warned her not to approach, but the badge tore free from her coat and flew into a slot in the pedestal. The city woke. Blue fire appeared in every window. Bridges rotated. The black towers unfolded like mechanical flowers. A giant ring rose from the central pit, covered in our family symbols. The ring projected an image above the plaza. It showed a man from centuries ago using duplication magic to build the underground city. He copied stone, mana, distance, and labor. One worker became 100 temporary bodies. One brick became a fortress. One flame became an artificial sun. The city had been created as a training ground for our family's magic. Then the image changed. The copied things began lasting longer than intended. Empty bodies wandered without commands. Duplicated beasts bred with real ones. Artificial suns burned holes through mountains. The family sealed the city and destroyed the method used to create permanent copies. I understood why the doorway recognized my seal. This place had been built by someone with a power similar to mine. Not identical. Duplication magic changed with each generation. The ancient mage copied physical things more easily, but lacked my control over abstract qualities. He could create 1,000 swords, but could not duplicate the silence between screams or the distance beneath a falling beam. The central ring was his final machine. It could take one object and make permanent duplicates. That was exactly the kind of device Damon would want. The plaza shook. Red lines spread across the tower. Damon had found the compression chamber and connected it to the city's power. He appeared on a balcony above us, surrounded by floating black devices. The ancient tools had accepted his mana and compressed it thousands of times. A red sphere burned behind him like a small sun. He announced that the underground city now belonged to whoever controlled its core. Rowan told him to shut the machine down. Damon ignored him. He said the academy had mocked his family by suspending him. The students had laughed after the forest trial, and a nameless transfer had interfered twice. Now he would take the city's power, return to the surface, and force every rank above him to kneel. His speech was dramatic. Lila whispered that he sounded jealous of her brother. I almost smiled. Then Damon activated the permanent duplication ring. The red sphere behind him became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. Each sphere contained compressed fire capable of destroying a tower. The ancient machine continued copying them. 16, 32, 64. Baimja. He aimed them at the plaza. He said Lila would place her badge into the central tower and unlock the city, or he would erase everyone below. I looked around. Dozens of students were trapped in the plaza. Rowan was preparing a barrier. Serena was calculating how many spheres she could redirect. Lila was reaching for her badge even though giving it to Damon would open the way to the surface. I stepped forward. Damon laughed when he saw me. He said the Pebble Magician had finally decided to act brave. I told him I wanted to surrender. Everyone looked at me. Lila shouted that I was a coward. Rowan told me to move back. Serena watched silently. Damon liked the idea. He lowered one red sphere and told me to climb the tower stairs with the badge. I asked him to promise he would let the others go. He promised immediately. That was how I knew he had no intention of doing it. I took Lila's badge and walked toward the stairs. She grabbed my coat. I quietly tapped her wrist and duplicated the sensation of my hand squeezing hers, the signal we used as children when I wanted her to trust me without asking questions. She froze. For 1 second, her eyes searched my disguised face. I released her and continued walking. Damon sent 2 floating devices to escort me. They aimed compressed blades at my back. I climbed slowly, looking weak, nervous, and exactly as harmless as he wanted me to be. At the top, I placed the badge near the tower slot. Damon moved closer. That was the mistake I needed. I asked whether the permanent duplication ring could copy anything. He said it could. I asked whether it could copy mistakes. His expression changed. I dropped the badge. Then I touched the nearest black device and duplicated the tiny fracture created when Damon forced his mana into it. The fracture copied itself through the ancient network. 1 crack appeared in every floating tool. Then 2, then 4. The permanent ring recognized the cracks as objects and began duplicating them too. The machine shattered. The red spheres lost control. Damon screamed and tried to compress them into 1 point. I let him succeed. All 64 burning spheres collapsed into a single bead of light above his palm. The bead contained enough force to tear the mountain open. He aimed it at me. I smiled. Damon fired. The instant the bead left his hand, I duplicated the promise he had made in the plaza. A promise was not a physical thing, but it had direction, intent, and a target. He had directed his words toward me. He would let the others go. I copied that direction and attached it to his attack. The red bead no longer recognized me as its target. It recognized the path away from everyone else. The attack turned upward. It pierced the tower, crossed the underground sky, and struck the sealed ceiling. The mountain shook. A column of red light erupted through the forest and reached the clouds. Damon stared at his empty hand. I picked up the badge. He attacked me directly. No hidden crystal, no staged accident, no monster used as cover. He was furious enough to forget caution. Compression lines wrapped around the balcony, folding stone, air, and light toward my body. The space around me shrank. The railing bent inward. Dust flattened into red needles. I let the spell close. Damon believed he had crushed me. Then he heard clapping from behind. I stood on the opposite side of the balcony. He turned and attacked again. The spell crushed another copy. I appeared above him, sitting on one of his floating devices. He fired upward. I vanished. Another version of me leaned against the tower wall. Then another stepped from the stairs. 10 reeds surrounded him. 20, 50. They were not independent fighters. They were duplicated positions, each one holding a copied instant of my presence. Damon could see them, sense them, and attack them, but none contained my current body. He compressed the entire balcony, every copy flattened like paper. I stepped out from his shadow. He finally looked afraid. I whispered that he had spent the entire week attacking the wrong person. Then I placed one finger against his chest and duplicated the recoil from every spell he had cast that night. All the force he had pushed outward returned at once. Damon flew through 3 walls, crossed the tower, and landed in the plaza below. I duplicated the soft landing from the cavern floor so he survived. Then I copied the stone restraints used by Academy guards and wrapped them around his arms and legs. The recording crystals had restarted when the red beam opened a path to the surface. They captured everything from the moment Damon aimed his attack at me. His sabotage in the forest was visible inside the disaster elk. His theft of the ancient tools was visible around the tower. His direct attacks were visible from every angle. He had finally provided enough evidence that influence could not erase it. Rowan stood over him with an expression colder than the underground city. He said Damon would be confined and turned over to the Academy guards the moment we returned. Damon tried to blame me. Serena stepped forward and said she had watched him attack first. That ended the argument. Lila climbed the tower stairs and reached me while my disguise was still intact. She looked at the hole in the ceiling, the shattered machines, and the dozens of fading copies of my body. Then she asked how a low-rank transfer had done any of that. I told her I had used the ancient device. She looked at the broken device. I told her it worked once. She looked at my hand. I told her I had been lucky. Her eyes narrowed in a way that reminded me of Serena. Then the entire city began to rise. The red beam had broken the upper seal. The underground towers moved upward through the mountain like stones floating through water. Streets folded. Buildings sank into the central pit. The training city was returning to its dormant position before the mountain collapsed around it. We had minutes to escape. I inserted Lila's badge into the central slot. The silver path transformed into a staircase of light reaching toward the hole above. Students began climbing. Rowan carried the injured. Serena redirected falling debris. Lila helped guide everyone toward the surface. I remained at the tower. The permanent duplication ring was cracked but not dead. If the city collapsed with the ring active, it might duplicate the collapse through every structure connected to it. One falling tower could become 100. One cave-in could become a mountain range of destruction. I needed to shut it down. The control chamber recognized my mana when I touched it. A message appeared in silver light. It did not call me Reed. It called me Adrian. Serena saw it. She had returned without me noticing. She stood in the doorway, reading my real name above the machine. For once, I could not pretend the letters were an accident. She asked whether Lila's legendary brother had been standing beside her all along. I told her this was a bad time. The tower tilted. A street folded into the ceiling. The central pit opened wider. The enormous things circling below began to rise. Serena looked at the machine and then at me. She said she would keep my secret until we escaped. I asked what happened after that. She said it depended on whether I survived. Fair enough. We worked together. The ring's power flowed in 12 directions. Serena redirected 11 streams into the central pit. I duplicated the one stable stream and used the copies to replace the others. The machine believed it was still receiving full power even as Serena emptied it. Cracks spread across the ring. Silver light filled the chamber. The creature beneath the city rose far enough for us to see its head. It was a serpent made from discarded duplicates. Broken towers formed its scales. Old weapons served as teeth. Thousands of unused spell fragments burned inside its eyes. It had been circling the pit for centuries, consuming everything the city rejected. Now the collapsing streets were feeding it. The serpent opened its mouth beneath the tower. Serena reversed gravity. We fell upward through the chamber as the serpent swallowed the lower floors. I duplicated the upward fall and multiplied it. We shot through the broken roof, crossed the underground sky, and reached the staircase of light. The serpent followed. It climbed from the pit, larger with every piece of the city it consumed. Students near the surface screamed. Rowan prepared to collapse the passage after everyone escaped. But the serpent would reach the opening first. I could not destroy it underground. An explosion large enough to kill it would bury the Academy Mountain. So I gave it something else to eat. I duplicated the taste of the ancient city's mana and placed it on the red beam leading to the sky. The serpent changed direction. It followed the beam upward. We emerged through the forest crater just before dawn. Students spilled across the broken clearing. Rowan raised a barrier around them. Serena landed beside him. I came last. The serpent erupted from the mountain behind me. Its body uncoiled into the sky, a black river of stone and weapons. It swallowed trees, ruins, and the remains of the disaster elk. The Academy towers lit every defense circle at once. Professors gathered on the floating bridges. Thousands of students watched from the walls. The serpent turned toward the Academy. I stood between it and the gate wearing a torn coat and the face of a rank 500 transfer. Lila shouted for me to run. I raised the empty bottle. The same bottle had held still air, protected us from the forest blast, and provided most of my excuses. Now I duplicated the empty space inside it. One bottle-sized emptiness became a room. The room became a hall. The hall became a cavern. I poured that expanding emptiness into the serpent's open mouth. The creature swallowed an impossible amount of nothing. Its body stretched. Its stone scales separated. The copied city fragments inside it lost contact with one another. I duplicated the gaps between those fragments until the serpent became a loose cloud of black pieces floating above the forest. Then I copied the softness of a feather and spread it across every piece. Thousands of harmless black flakes fell from the sky. They covered the forest like snow. The entire Academy saw it. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the ranking crystals above the gate began calculating. The field trial had recorded monster cores, rescues, survival, ancient defense neutralization, and the destruction of a disaster-class creature. The board flashed so quickly that names blurred. My rank jumped from 530 to 112, then to 80, then 41, then 19. It stopped at rank 11. Lila ran across the clearing, tackled me, and nearly knocked off my disguise. She shouted that I had become rank 11 using street tricks. I told her the bottle was expensive. She held it up. The bottom fell out. Students began cheering. Rowan looked exhausted. Serena looked amused for the first time. Damon lay bound near the crater, while Academy guards carried him away. This time, he was not returning to class. The evidence was too clear, the danger too great, and the witnesses too numerous. Lila watched the guards take him toward the city detention fortress. She looked relieved, but also guilty. She knew her stolen application had opened the underground city. She knew her bragging had attracted Damon. For the first time since I arrived, she became quiet. I sat beside her on a fallen tree. She said her brother would be disappointed if he knew what she had done. I almost removed the disguise. Then she added that he would probably forgive her because he was incredibly wise, handsome, and generous. I decided to remain hidden a little longer. I told her that maybe her brother already knew. She laughed and said Adrian was too lazy to travel all the way to the Academy. Behind us, Serena coughed to hide a laugh. My secret had survived the dungeon. Unfortunately, the Academy now believed Reed was one of the strongest students alive, and rank 11 meant the 10 people above me were allowed to challenge me whenever they wanted. Rank 11 sounded impressive until I discovered what it did to breakfast. The moment I entered the dining hall, every conversation stopped. Students moved away from the tables nearest me. Some looked afraid, others looked eager. A few held challenge papers in plain sight. The Academy treated rank like gravity. The higher someone climbed, the more attention pulled toward them. I had spent years avoiding attention. Now someone had painted a giant picture of me on the dining hall wall. The picture showed Reed standing on the head of the underground serpent with lightning behind him. My coat billowed like a royal cape. My hair looked much better than it did in reality. At the bottom, someone had written, "The Bottle King." Lila loved it. She stood on a chair and explained that my success came from studying the legendary techniques of her brother. Students actually took notes. One asked whether Adrian sold training manuals. Lila said he did not care about money because true geniuses survived on sunlight and wisdom. At home, I had survived on duplicated soup. I took my breakfast to a quiet corner, but Rowan sat across from me. He placed a stack of documents on the table. I immediately disliked the stack, even before he explained it. The Academy Council had reviewed Lila's enrollment materials after the underground city opened. They now knew the family research attached to her application was far beyond her current ability. They suspected she had taken someone else's work. That suspicion was completely correct. Rowan said Lila would face a public competency examination in 10 days. If she failed, her rank would be erased and she would be removed from advanced classes. Worse, the Academy would announce that her achievements were false. Lila stopped bragging. She looked at the table and said she could pass. Rowan asked whether she understood the research she submitted. She understood perhaps 1 page out of 20. She said yes. I kicked her under the table. She changed the answer to mostly. Rowan left the documents and told her to prepare. For several seconds, Lila remained quiet. Then she gathered the papers and announced that Adrian would never allow his sister to fail. I asked whether she planned to contact him. She said no. I asked why. She said he would be furious if he learned she had taken his invitation. I waited. She added that he might also be slightly impressed. I asked what part was impressive. She said reaching the academy without being caught. I reminded her that she had been caught. She said the details were still developing. I agreed to help her study. That should have been enough trouble for one morning. But the rank 10 student challenged me before I finished eating. He was an upper-year spell duelist with a reputation for breaking opponents' hands so they could not form circles. He had watched the forest projection and decided my power came from tools. The Academy's ranked arena allowed challengers to choose one restriction. He chose a duel with no items. I looked at my empty bottle. It had no bottom, so it barely counted as an item anymore. I accepted. The arena filled within an hour. Rank battles among the top 20 were major events. Floating crystals projected the match across every tower. Lila sat in the front row with the giant portrait of Adrian beside her. Serena watched from the highest platform. Rowan stood near the referee circle, probably wondering whether the arena would survive. My opponent entered with bare hands. So did I. The restriction removed weapons, tools, and stored crystals. It did not remove clothing, so he wore a coat covered in tiny spell threads. I wore my ruined gray coat, which contained 3 crumbs, a piece of string, and an emergency sausage. The referee began the duel. My opponent vanished. He used acceleration magic, storing movement in his muscles and releasing it in bursts. He appeared behind me and aimed for my right hand. I moved too slowly. His fingers struck my wrist. A cracking sound echoed through the arena. The audience gasped. My opponent smiled. Then he looked at his own hand. I had duplicated the sound of a breaking bone, not the injury. He had heard the crack and assumed he succeeded. That half-second of confidence gave me time to attach a copied delay to his next movement. He punched again. His fist stopped an inch from my face. The punch itself had already happened, but I delayed the result. His body continued moving while the impact waited in place. He stumbled through me. 3 steps later, the delayed punch struck empty air behind him and created a shockwave that knocked him forward. He recovered instantly and released 10 stored movements at once. Copies of his position appeared around me, each connected by blurred lines. He was not creating duplicate fighters. He was simply moving so fast, the eye held the previous images. I did not copy him. I copied the floor's lack of movement. Stillness spread beneath his feet. Every step lost its forward result. His legs moved, his coat snapped, and his mana exploded. But he remained in the same place like someone running inside a dream. The audience began laughing. He became furious and released all his stored acceleration downward. The arena floor cracked. I had expected that too. The broken stone launched upward around us. I duplicated one piece into a circle of floating steps and walked into the air. He followed by jumping from fragment to fragment. Each leap carried enough force to destroy a wall. I kept one step ahead, looking barely able to escape. He chased me higher. The students shouted as we climbed above the arena barrier. Then I removed the duplicated steps. He fell. I did not. I had copied the position of my left foot at the moment it touched the highest stone. That position remained in the air after the stone vanished. I stood on an invisible location while my opponent dropped toward the arena. He released acceleration to stop himself. I duplicated the downward direction of his earlier attacks and attached it to every stored movement in his body. Instead of slowing, he accelerated faster. At the last second, I copied the softness of my emergency sausage and spread it across one patch of stone. He hit the floor, sank waist deep into a surface that bent like cooked dough, and became stuck. The referee counted. He struggled, but every movement pushed him deeper. When the count ended, I restored the stone. It hardened around his legs without injuring him. The arena declared me rank 10. I floated down using duplicated steps. Lila waved the portrait and shouted that Adrian's spiritual training had won again. My defeated opponent demanded to know what kind of magic could make stone behave like sausage. I told him it was a family recipe. I had barely left the arena when rank 9 challenged me, then rank 8, then rank 6. The academy allowed a student to refuse repeated challenges for 24 hours, but accepting gave bonus points. I needed those points. Lila's competency examination would test advanced combat theory, and access to the restricted training libraries depended on rank, so I accepted all 3. The rank 9 duel took place in a flooded arena. My opponent controlled lightning and filled the water with electricity. I duplicated the water's surface tension until it became strong enough to stand on, then folded the surface into a giant sheet. The lightning remained trapped inside the water as I rolled the entire arena into a glowing blue cylinder. My opponent found himself standing inside a spinning wall of electrified water. I asked whether he surrendered. He fired more lightning. I duplicated the cylinder into 3 smaller rings, placed them around him, and rotated them in opposite directions. His own electricity formed a cage. He surrendered after his hair stood straight up and refused to come down. The rank 8 duel took place in a dark chamber where neither fighter could see. My opponent used scent and vibration to locate targets. I duplicated my footsteps 1,000 times. The chamber filled with movement from every direction. Then I copied the smell of Rowan's bitter tea and attached it to a training dummy. My opponent attacked the dummy so violently that the chamber wall collapsed into Rowan's observation room. Rowan was standing there holding the same tea. The attacker froze. I tapped his shoulder from behind and ended the duel with a basic sleep spell copied across every breath he took. He fell asleep standing, completed one more attack while unconscious, and accidentally destroyed the dummy he had already defeated. The rank 6 student was more dangerous. He controlled pressure. Unlike Damon's compression, which concentrated force into points, pressure magic changed the weight of the entire environment. The duel began on a floating platform above the academy. He increased the air pressure until breathing felt like swallowing stone. Then he made gravity 10 times stronger. My knees bent. The platform cracked beneath my feet. He walked toward me without difficulty because he had placed a low-pressure field around himself. He believed raw power would force me to reveal my true magic. He was correct. He was simply wrong about what revealing it would do. I reached down and touched my shadow. Pressure pushed equally in every direction. I duplicated the single direction in which it was weakest, the tiny upward resistance created by warm air leaving the platform. One weak current became millions. A pillar of rising air formed beneath me. I stood. He doubled the gravity. I duplicated the upward current again. My coat lifted. The platform stopped falling. Clouds below us split in a perfect circle. He increased the pressure until the floating stone began collapsing inward. I copied the empty space inside the cracks and expanded it. Every time pressure crushed the platform smaller, duplicated gaps restored its size. The stone vibrated between collapse and expansion, producing a low sound that shook the academy windows. My opponent finally released his full spell. A transparent sphere appeared around me. Air, light, sound, and mana compressed toward the center. It was similar to Damon's technique but broader and cleaner. Students on distant bridges covered their ears as the sphere shrank. I allowed it to close around one finger. Then I duplicated the outside. The concept was simple. Every object had an inside and an outside. His spell controlled everything inside the sphere. I copied the surrounding outside space and inserted it into the center. The sphere suddenly contained more outside than inside. The spell turned inside out. Pressure exploded away from me. The shock wave crossed the sky, pushed clouds to the horizon, and sent every loose hat in the academy flying toward the city. My opponent shot backward. I duplicated the position of the platform behind him, creating a second surface in his path. He struck it, bounced, and landed at my feet. The arena barrier failed. The floating platform tipped. I duplicated its balance and held the copy in place until everyone evacuated. The ranking board moved me to rank 6. That was when the academy stopped calling me lucky. Students began calling me dangerous. I preferred lucky. Dangerous people received serious attention. Lucky people received irritated attention. The difference mattered. By sunset, I had earned access to the restricted library. It occupied the upper floors of the White Tower, where books floated in rotating rings and knowledge crystals drifted like stars. Lila needed to understand the research she had stolen, so I carried her through a side entrance hidden inside a duplicated shadow. She thought we were using a student council maintenance passage. Serena was waiting on the other side. She leaned against a shelf, holding the academy record of Adrian's childhood examination. The page showed my real mana pattern. Beside it floated a crystal recording of Reed's spell from the underground city. The patterns matched. Lila could not see the documents because Serena had placed them behind a vector field that turned light away. To my sister, Serena simply appeared out of nowhere and asked why a rank 6 student was sneaking into the library after hours. Lila blamed me. I admired her speed. Serena told Lila to search the eastern shelves for the required research references. Lila hurried away, grateful to escape punishment. The moment she was out of hearing, Serena held up the examination record. She asked why I was still hiding. I said I liked quiet. She looked toward the section of the tower where students were chanting the Bottle King song. I admitted the plan had developed problems. She asked whether I intended to tell Lila. I said not until her examination ended. If she learned I had followed her, protected her, and fixed every disaster she caused, she would either feel guilty or become even more confident. Both options were dangerous. Serena asked what she received for keeping my secret. I expected a request for information, a duel, or access to family magic. She said she wanted me to stop pretending my victories were accidents when we eventually fought. Rank 1 wanted a real duel. I told her that sounded exhausting. She smiled and said I had already climbed 500 ranks in 3 days. Then she redirected the entire floating library around me. Shelves moved like blades. Books became a spiral. The floor tilted vertically. Lila shouted from far away as the eastern section rose above us. Serena was demonstrating what waited at rank 1. I duplicated the position of the nearest chair and placed it beneath me each time the room moved. I remained seated while the tower rotated. Shelves passed overhead. Books flew sideways. A staircase curled into a circle. I calmly opened a research volume and began reading. Serena increased the speed. I copied the stillness of the page. The entire book remained steady in my hands while the library became a storm. She finally stopped. Every shelf returned to place. Lila stood upside down on the ceiling, holding 3 books and looking offended. I lowered her with a wind spell. Serena told me our duel would happen at the end of the Grand Ranking Festival. The festival was 2 weeks away. Until then, I needed to defeat ranks 5 through 2, prepare Lila for a public examination, hide my identity, and prevent anyone from stealing the broken permanent duplication ring that had been recovered from the forest crater. That last problem revealed itself when we left the library. The academy storage tower was burning. Black-cloaked intruders moved across the roof, carrying a metal case large enough to hold the ring fragment. Guards chased them, but the intruders threw pulsing crystals that turned every staircase into liquid shadow. Students slipped through floors. Barriers folded. The thieves crossed a floating bridge toward the city. Lila saw the case and shouted that it belonged to her family. Then she jumped from the tower without a flight spell. I sighed, duplicated the balcony beneath her, and made a path of copied stone through the sky. She ran after the thieves. I followed because apparently rank 6 was not high enough to protect me from stupid decisions. The thieves had planned their escape well. They did not fly in a straight line. They ran across academy roofs, dropped through open courtyards, and used short-range portals between towers. Each portal destroyed itself after one use. Their cloaks absorbed magical tracking. The metal case around the ring fragment blocked its signal. They had planned for guards, professors, and high-ranking students. They had not planned for me to duplicate their escape route. I copied the first portal at the instant it opened. The thieves passed through and appeared 3 towers away. Lila reached the empty air where the portal had been and nearly fell. I placed the copied portal in front of her. We stepped through. The thieves saw us appear and changed direction. They jumped from a roof onto a flying transport platform carrying kitchen supplies. One threw a crystal behind him. The crystal burst into hundreds of black threads that tied themselves around anything containing mana. Lila raised a fire shield. The threads wrapped around the spell and pulled her forward. Instead of resisting, she remembered our control training. She pulled the empty space ahead of the threads. Their own momentum curved. The black net passed around her and wrapped around the thief who had thrown it. He fell into a cart full of onions. I was proud. I did not have time to say so because the transport platform crashed through a stained glass window. We entered an advanced summoning class at full speed. Students dove away. Half-finished creatures scattered across the floor. A giant bird made of smoke panicked, grabbed the metal case, and flew toward the ceiling. The thieves attacked the bird. Lila attacked the thieves. The summoning students attacked everyone. I duplicated the classroom's exit door 12 times and placed copies around the walls. Every person chose a different door. Each copied door led back into the same room from another direction. The thieves ran out, appeared behind themselves, and collided. Summoned creatures chased them through a loop. A guard entered one door and came out of a cabinet. The smoke bird dropped the case. I copied the case's downward motion and redirected the copy sideways. The case flew into my hand. It was empty. The real ring fragment had never left the storage tower. The thieves had used the fire and the chase as a distraction. At that exact moment, the academy alarm changed. A deep bell sounded from the opposite side of the campus. The true storage barrier had been broken. The group in front of us stopped running. They had completed their job. Their only purpose was to pull defenders away. I handed the empty case to Lila and told her to keep chasing. She asked where I was going. I said I needed a bathroom. She shouted that my timing was terrible. I stepped through one of the duplicated doors and changed its destination. Doors were simply agreements between two sides of a wall. I copied the agreement and attached one side to the classroom, the other to the storage tower. I walked through and arrived inside the burning vault. The real thieves were already there. They wore gray masks and carried tools designed to erase magical ownership. The broken ring floated above a dismantled pedestal. One intruder held a device against it, stripping away the academy seals. Another had placed explosives around the room. A third watched the only entrance. None noticed the new door appearing behind a shelf. I could have defeated them instantly. Instead, I needed to learn where they planned to take the ring. So I made a copy of the fragment. The broken ring contained ancient mana, permanent duplication residue, and a crack shaped like lightning. Copying it perfectly would have been difficult. I did not need perfect. I only needed something convincing for a few minutes. I duplicated the visible shape, the weight, the cold surface, and the outer mana pulse. Then I switched it with the real fragment while smoke covered the room. The thieves placed my fake in a shielded case. They activated the explosives. I duplicated the final second before detonation and delayed it. The crystals remained frozen at 1 second while the thieves escaped through a portal. I followed by attaching a copied shadow to the bottom of their case. Their portal opened above the city. We emerged on a floating platform shaped like a black ship. It had been hiding beneath the Academy Mountain, using the city's shadow to conceal itself. Dozens of masked criminals waited on deck. Metal cages lined the sides. Inside those cages were stolen magical creatures, weapons, and artifacts taken from schools across the region. The thieves delivered the fake ring to their leader. I remained inside the case's shadow. The ship accelerated away from the academy. Its outer barrier bent light, making the entire vessel disappear. Below us, the city lights became small. Ahead, storm clouds covered the horizon. The leader opened the case. He immediately knew the fragment was fake. That was faster than I expected. He could not see me, but he could feel the shadow attached to the case. He drove a black spike through it. The spike pierced my copied shadow and pinned my movement. Clever. The criminals had studied strange magic. They knew how to attack through connections. I stepped out before the spike sealed the link. Every masked face turned toward me. I looked around the invisible criminal ship, the stolen artifacts, and the cages. Then I raised one hand and said I had taken the wrong door. Nobody laughed. The leader released a suppression field. Heavy gray mana covered the deck. Spells weakened. Summoned creatures vanished. The shadow under my disguise flickered, almost revealing my real face. The criminals surrounded me. They believed the suppression field had made me powerless. It had weakened active magic. My duplicates were already active. During the chase, I had copied every thief's footsteps. I released those copied steps across the deck. The ship suddenly sounded as if hundreds of people were running in different directions. Guards turned toward false movement. I duplicated the pressure of hands on door handles. Every cabin opened at once. I copied the motion of cage locks turning. Metal doors swung wide. The stolen creatures escaped. A horned cat the size of a carriage jumped onto the mast. A glass insect swarm filled the sails. A water beast poured across the deck and swallowed 3 criminals before spitting them into a storage barrel. None of the creatures were friendly, but they hated their captors more than they hated me. The leader tried to strengthen the suppression field. I duplicated its downward pressure and attached it to the ship's left side. The invisible vessel tilted. Criminals slid across the deck. Cages crashed into one another. The fake ring fragment fell from the open case. I kicked it into the air and duplicated it 100 times. Every copy looked real. The criminals abandoned their positions and chased them. One jumped from the mast to catch a fragment. It dissolved into smoke. Another opened a portal beneath 3 copies. They turned into bricks halfway through. 2 criminals fought over a glowing ring that became an onion when touched. I had copied several objects during the classroom incident and mixed their outer appearances. The deck became complete chaos. The leader ignored the copies and attacked me. Black spikes rose from every shadow. I duplicated the absence of shadow inside a flash of lightning. White light spread beneath my feet. Leaving the spikes nowhere to emerge, he switched to chains made from suppressed mana. The chains did not attack magic, they attacked intention. The moment I decided to dodge, they curved toward the direction I intended to move. That was a useful design. I decided to walk left. The chains moved left. I copied that decision and created 1,000 identical intentions around the deck. The chains split apart, chasing possibilities. They wrapped around criminals, masts, cages, and escaped creatures. One chain tied the leader's sleeve to the ship's wheel. He tore free and reached for a red crystal under his coat. The crystal contained a destructive pulse aimed at the ship's core. He planned to destroy the evidence and escape alone. I let him activate it. The pulse entered the ship. I duplicated the path leading from the crystal to the engine and bent every copy back toward the leader. The destructive energy traveled through the deck, reached the core, turned around, and returned through his own shadow. His coat exploded. The red crystal flew from his hand. I caught it and copied its shutdown signal across the ship. The engine stopped. The invisibility barrier failed. The black vessel appeared in the sky directly above the city detention fortress. That location was not an accident. While the criminals chased fake ring fragments, I had duplicated the ship's forward distance in small pieces and rearranged them. They believed they were flying toward the storm. In reality, every mile had curved us in a wide circle back toward the Academy City. Below, guards looked up and saw a stolen artifact ship full of masked criminals, open cages, and illegal weapons. The criminals looked down and realized where they were. I waved. The leader tried to restart the engines. I duplicated their stillness. The ship fell. I waited until everyone began screaming, then copied the gentle landing of a leaf and placed it under the vessel. The black ship drifted down like a feather and settled in the fortress courtyard without breaking a single cage. Guards surrounded it. I opened the main gate from the inside. The escaped creatures rushed out first. Behind them came criminals tangled in their own intention chains. The leader tried to hide among the prisoners, so I duplicated his mask and placed copies on every guard. He became confused for 1 second. That was long enough for a horned cat to sit on him. The guards took everyone into the fortress. I returned the stolen artifacts, freed the creatures, and quietly kept the criminal suppression crystal. I did not steal it. It had exploded out of the leader's coat and landed in my pocket several times due to duplicated motion. That explanation would probably not satisfy Rowan, so I planned not to mention it. I used the copied door to return to the academy. Only 7 minutes had passed. Lila was still chasing the decoy thieves through the duplicated classroom doors. She had captured most of them by freezing one doorway and placing a wind trap behind another. The final thief ran through a copy and appeared inside a supply closet. She locked it. Students cheered. Lila looked around and asked where I had been. I said the bathroom was far away. Then the black criminal ship became visible outside the window as guards hauled its crew into the fortress below. She stared at it. I said I might have taken a detour. The academy recovered the real ring fragment from my coat. Rowan asked how it got there. I said the thieves dropped it. Serena stood behind him, clearly enjoying my discomfort. The ranking board awarded points for recovering the fragment, exposing the criminal ship, and capturing the thieves. My rank rose from 6 to 5. Lila received enough points to enter the top 100. Her new rank was 98. She looked at the board for a long time. It was the first achievement at the academy that belonged completely to her. She had controlled her spells, captured criminals, and protected other students without using my research or my name. She tried to act calm. Then she hugged the empty metal case and jumped up and down. I pretended not to notice how happy that made me. The competency examination was still 9 days away. We spent every free hour in hidden practice rooms. I taught her to break complex spells into tiny actions. Instead of creating one giant fire dragon, she learned to create a scale, then duplicate the pattern through ordinary repetition. Instead of blocking an attack with a wall, she redirected it using thin layers of air. She learned to wait, watch, and let opponents create their own weaknesses. That last lesson was difficult. Lila preferred creating weaknesses with explosions. To train patience, I made her duel a candle. The rule was simple. She had to extinguish the flame without touching it, using magic, moving the air, changing the temperature, blocking oxygen, or damaging the candle. She stared at it for 2 hours. Then she picked up the candle and placed it outside in the rain. I told her that counted. She celebrated as if she had defeated Serena. Rowan observed several sessions from behind a one-way wall. I knew he was there because his bitter tea smell entered before he did. He watched Lila improve. He also watched me explain research that supposedly belonged to Adrian. On the 5th night, he entered the room and placed my original childhood equation on the floor. He asked me to solve it. I said I could not. He asked me to correct one line. I said the symbols were too advanced. He erased a mark and replaced it incorrectly. My eye twitched. He changed another line. I looked away. He reversed an entire sequence. My teeth hurt. Then he drew a triangle inside the circular mana path. I grabbed the chalk from his hand and repaired the equation before I could stop myself. Rowan folded his arms. Lila looked at the completed symbols and said her brother used to make the same angry face when she wrote in his notebooks. I slowly returned the chalk. Rowan asked who taught me. I said a traveling street magician. He asked whether the street magician was named Adrian. Lila laughed so hard she dropped the candle. She thought the idea was impossible. Adrian was tall, impressive, mysterious, and probably surrounded by floating books at all times. Reed was thin, lazy, poorly dressed, and had once used sausage magic. Rowan looked at me. I looked at the floor. He understood. Now 3 people knew my identity. Serena, Rowan, and me. Lila remained safely outside that group. Rowan did not expose me. Instead, he challenged me to a faculty demonstration duel the next morning. He said the examination board needed proof that Lila's new training was valid. If her instructor could defeat an academy professor using the same basic principles, the board would judge her methods more fairly. I asked whether we could simply show them her progress. He said public confidence had already been damaged. This was about everyone believing Lila was a fraud. A flashy victory would change that belief faster than any explanation. I hated that he was right. The next morning, the academy gathered in the grand arena. Rowan stood on one side with a professor's blue coat, a staff made from living wood, and enough mana to fill the sky with symbols. I stood on the other side holding a piece of chalk. The audience laughed when they saw my weapon. Lila did not. She had watched me correct the equation. For the first time, she looked at Reed with genuine suspicion. The duel began. Rowan drew one circle in the air. 1,000 spells appeared above him. Rowan did not cast one spell at a time. He wrote magical grammar into the sky. The first circle was a sentence. Every symbol after it became a word. Fire filled the spaces between wind, water wrapped around lightning. Earth compressed into floating pages of stone. Within seconds, the air above the arena looked like an open book written in light. Then every sentence ended with me. A storm descended. I held up the chalk. The audience laughed again. I drew one short line in the air. The line was not a barrier. It was a correction. Rowan's first fire spell relied on a curved mana route. I duplicated the straight edge of my chalk mark and placed it inside the curve. The fire lost its turn and continued forward, missing me by several feet. The wind spell behind it expected the fire to be in place. It struck empty air and spun sideways. The water layer collided with the redirected wind. Lightning entered the water. The stone pages absorbed the electricity and became magnetic. Rowan's 1,000 spells pulled themselves into one giant glowing book. The book slammed shut around him. The arena went silent. Then the stone cover exploded outward. Rowan stepped through the debris and changed tactics. He planted his living staff into the floor. Wooden roots spread beneath the arena and rose around me as a forest of spears. Each root carried a different spell circle. Cutting one would release fire. Dodging another triggered chains. Blocking a third opened a gravity pit. He had created a puzzle where every answer was wrong. I liked it. I tapped the chalk against the floor and duplicated the dust. White powder spread between the roots. I copied the quality of chalk that made it useful for writing and placed it across every wooden surface. The roots became writable. As they attacked, I drew corrections directly onto them. A fire root changed one symbol and began producing soap bubbles. A chain root tied itself into a bow. A gravity root pointed upward and launched 3 sections of arena seating into the air. I caught the seats with copied stillness and returned them gently, while the audience screamed and then pretended it had not screamed. Rowan sent more roots. I wrote faster. My chalk became 10 pieces, then 100. They floated around me, each copying the movement of my fingers. White marks flashed across the wooden forest. Spells changed purpose before they finished forming. A blade became a spoon. A thunder circle produced a warm breeze. A binding spell wrapped a stone pillar in a comfortable blanket. Lila stood in the front row with her mouth open. She had seen the same principle during our training. Do not overpower the whole spell. Change the smallest piece that controls the result. Rowan smiled. He had been waiting for me to demonstrate it publicly. Then he activated the true purpose of the roots. Every altered spell connected. The soap bubbles reflected the warm breeze. The spoon carried the lightning charge. The blanket tightened around the pillar and completed a giant hidden circle across the arena. Rowan had allowed me to rewrite the roots because every correction became part of his larger design. A transparent cube formed around me. Inside it, magical rules reversed. Fire cooled. Water became dry. Movement created stillness. Duplication should have created originals, while originals should have split into unstable copies. He had built the cube specifically to interfere with my power. The audience did not know that. Serena did. She leaned forward. I touched the wall of the cube. My finger became 2 fingers for an instant, then both tried to become the original. The magic rejected the contradiction and shocked my hand. Rowan launched a basic stone pellet. Inside the cube, the original pellet became multiple unstable versions. They attacked from different angles. I stepped aside. Movement produced stillness and locked my leg in place. The pellet struck. My disguise tore across one shoulder. Lila shouted my fake name. Rowan cast a water ribbon. Inside the cube, dryness spread from it like sand, pulling moisture from the air. I could not use my normal tricks without feeding the reversal field. That was the point. Rowan wanted to see whether I understood magic beyond duplication. I did. I broke the chalk in half. The cube reversed the action. Instead of one object becoming 2, the 2 halves tried to become 1. They snapped back together. I broke it again. It rejoined. I repeated the motion faster. Every break created a forced restoration. The chalk began building energy from the contradiction. Break, restore. Break, restore. Each cycle produced a pulse. I used the pulse to draw without duplicating anything. One white line appeared on the floor, then another. I constructed a basic beginner circle, the same flawed fire circle Rowan had drawn on my first day. I deliberately used the incorrect angle. The cube reversed magical rules. Inside a place where wrong became right, the flawed circle became perfect. A small flame appeared. Because fire cooled, the flame absorbed heat. Frost spread across the cube walls. Because movement created stillness, the flickering flame locked the surrounding mana in place. Because originals split into unstable versions, the one flawed circle multiplied on its own. I had not duplicated it. Rowan's field did. Thousands of cold flames covered the inside of the cube. They froze every reversed rule. The structure became rigid, bright, and fragile. I tapped it with the restored chalk. The cube shattered like glass. Cold fire poured into the arena. I copied nothing. I simply used wind to push the flames toward the living roots. The roots froze. Rowan tried to release the hidden circle, but the blanket, spoon, soap, and altered spell pieces were still connected to it. The entire design locked in place. I walked through the frozen forest. Rowan raised his staff. I placed the chalk against its tip and drew one dot. That dot completed the smallest spell possible, a light. The living staff, filled with stored mana, released all its power through the tiny circle. A beam of harmless white light shot into the sky. It passed through the arena barrier, crossed the clouds, and drew a glowing line visible from the entire city. Rowan's staff emptied itself in one spectacular flash. He looked at the powerless wood in his hand. I offered him the chalk. He surrendered. The arena erupted. Students shouted, laughed, and argued about what they had seen. Some believed I had defeated a professor with one line. Others insisted the chalk was an ancient weapon. A rumor spread that I could rewrite reality if given a clean wall. Lila climbed over the arena railing and ran toward me. I expected questions about my identity. Instead, she grabbed the chalk and asked whether Adrian could do that. I said probably. She nodded proudly and declared that I must have copied his methods after reading her application research. The suspicion vanished. My sister could solve difficult spell problems when focused, but she remained completely helpless against conclusions she liked. The demonstration changed the Academy's attitude before her examination. Students no longer saw the research as impossible nonsense. They had watched its principals defeat Rowan. Now they wanted to know whether Lila could use them too. Her examination took place 3 days later. The board placed her in a circular arena with 100 floating targets. Each target reacted differently. Some reflected fire. Some absorbed lightning. Some moved away from wind. Some exploded when struck too hard. The test was designed to expose students who memorized powerful spells without understanding control. The old Lila would have destroyed the arena in 10 seconds. The new Lila stood still. She watched. The targets attacked first. Red beams crossed the arena. She moved the empty space ahead of her body and slid between them with tiny steps. A stone target charged. She did not block it. She changed the temperature of one wheel, creating uneven friction. The target curved into another, 2 down. A group of floating spheres released lightning. She formed 10 drops of water, passed them through metal rings, and connected the electricity into a harmless loop. 8 more down. The audience became quiet. Lila stopped trying to look impressive. That made her impressive. She used soap bubbles to bend light, feathers to balance sparks, shadows to guide ice, and one candle to lure heat away from an explosive target. Every exercise I had given her appeared in a different form. She solved attacks instead of overpowering them. At the final target, the board changed the challenge. A giant construct rose from the floor. It carried a false family seal on its chest and used spells taken from the research notebook. This was the real question. Could she handle the knowledge she had claimed as her own? The construct duplicated fireballs. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. The arena filled with burning spheres. Lila looked toward me. I did nothing. She had to win this one herself. The fireballs descended. She lifted both hands, not to block them, but to create a thin wind path between each flame. Then she pulled the empty spaces together. The fireballs curved into a spiral. She froze the spiral's outer edge, trapping the heat inside a rotating shell. The construct continued producing flames, feeding her attack. When the shell became bright enough, she released one side. The spiral transformed into a fire drill and pierced the construct's false seal. The machine split open. She did not celebrate yet. The duplicated fireballs inside it remained active. Instead of letting them explode, she divided the cold from her ice shell into small pieces and attached one to every flame. The fire vanished in a wave of white mist. 100 targets fell. Lila passed. More importantly, the arena crystals recorded her methods as her own. Nobody could claim Adrian had cast for her from far away. Nobody could say a stolen notebook was the only reason she belonged at the academy. Her rank rose from 98 to 54. She stood in the center of the mist, breathing hard and smiling. I stayed in the audience. For the first time, she did not mention her legendary brother. She took the applause for herself. That was better than any rank I could earn. After the examination, she found me behind the arena and punched my shoulder. She said my street tricks were almost useful. I told her she had done well. She looked away and said Adrian would have been prouder. I told her he probably was. She became quiet again. Then she said that when she finally met him after graduation, she would pretend stealing his invitation had been part of a brilliant plan. I asked what the plan was. She said she had not invented that part yet. The Grand Ranking Festival began the next morning. For 7 days, the academy transformed into a vertical battlefield. Every tower became a stage. Floating bridges moved. Training zones opened. Ranked students challenged one another in duels, races, monster rooms, puzzle chambers, and team battles. The top 10 were required to defend their positions at least once. I was rank 5 after defeating Rowan and recovering the ring. Rank 4 challenged me in the Sky Maze. The maze consisted of thousands of floating doors, each open to a different location in the air. Some led upward, some downward, some back to the beginning. The first fighter to reach the golden platform at the center won. My opponent specialized in spatial memory. He had studied the maze for months and memorized every door sequence. I entered without studying anything. He laughed and disappeared through the first door. I opened the same door, but before stepping through, I duplicated its destination. The door led to a platform 200 feet higher. I copied that destination and attached it to the next door, then the next. Soon every door I touched led to the same useful place. I walked upward through a staircase of mismatched entrances while my opponent followed the official route through hundreds of turns. Halfway to the center, the maze rotated. His memorized map became useless. My copied destinations remained attached. I reached the golden platform, sat down, and duplicated my waiting time, so it looked as if I had been there for hours when he arrived. He was so shocked that he stepped backward through a door and returned to the starting point. The board moved me to rank 4. Rank 3 chose a monster hunt inside the Academy's illusion wilderness. The creatures were physical constructs wearing false appearances, but they did not imitate people or copy our moves. They looked like giant wolves, insects, and birds, while hiding completely different bodies beneath. My opponent possessed perfect magical sight. He could see through every illusion. He believed that guaranteed victory. I could also see through them. I pretended I could not. He raced ahead, targeting high-value creatures. I wandered behind, attacked harmless bushes, and acted confused. The audience watching through crystals laughed. My opponent relaxed. Then he entered the valley containing the final beast. It appeared to be a small rabbit. His magical sight showed a giant horned monster beneath the illusion. He prepared a powerful piercing spell aimed at the hidden chest. I had examined the valley from the ridge. The magical sight itself was being bent. The rabbit illusion was fake, but the giant monster image beneath it was also fake. The real construct was the valley floor. My opponent attacked the chest he believed was hidden under the rabbit. His spell struck the ground. The entire valley woke. Stone walls rose like jaws. Trees became teeth. The river curled into a tongue. My opponent found himself standing inside the mouth of a landscape-sized creature. I jumped from the ridge and duplicated the rabbit's small size as a concept. I placed that size over the valley construct's active spell frame. The enormous mouth shrank. Rock walls folded inward. Trees shortened. The river twisted into a blue ribbon. Within seconds, the valley-sized monster became a stone rabbit sitting in my palm. I carried it to the finish circle. The trial crystal awarded me the core, and enough points to take rank 3. My opponent climbed out of the crater where the valley had been and demanded an explanation. I told him the rabbit was larger on the inside. Rank 2 did not challenge me immediately. He waited until the 5th day of the festival, when I was tired from duels and Lila was participating in her own ranking matches. Then he chose the 100-floor battle tower. That tower was the Academy's most famous trial. 2 fighters entered separate versions of the same structure. Each floor contained monsters, traps, or a combat puzzle. Progress appeared on a giant crystal outside. The first to clear the final floor won. The tower suppressed teleportation, outside items, and stored spell energy. Every 10 floors the difficulty doubled. Most students required an hour to reach floor 50. Nobody below rank 5 had ever cleared all 100 alone. My opponent entered his tower with perfect confidence. I entered mine carrying nothing but my torn coat. The doors closed. A voice announced floor 1. 10 wooden creatures rushed me. I created 1 pebble. The tower probably regretted that immediately. The pebble struck the first wooden creature in the forehead. It did no damage. That was intentional. The creature swung at me. I stepped aside and duplicated the path of its fist. 9 copies of that path appeared across the room. The other wooden creatures entered those copied trajectories and were pulled into the attack. 1 punch knocked down the entire group. The door to floor 2 opened. I picked up the same pebble and continued. Floors 2 through 10 tested basic combat. Stone insects, firebirds, rope monsters, and moving walls attacked from every direction. I used the pebble as a target, a weight, a false core, a sound source, and once as a chair. On floor 7, I duplicated its falling motion into a rain of invisible impacts. On floor 9, I copied the tiny shadow beneath it and stretched the shadow into a tunnel under the monsters. On floor 10, a giant wooden hand tried to crush me, so I duplicated the gaps between its fingers until the hand became a harmless fence. Outside, the progress crystal showed me clearing 10 floors in 3 minutes. Rank 2 cleared them in 2. He was genuinely strong. He used destruction magic, erasing the connection between matter and stability. Walls collapsed when he touched them. Monsters fell apart before reaching him. Traps lost the parts that made them dangerous. He had spent years preparing for the tower. I had spent the previous night teaching Lila how to extinguish a candle. Floors 11 through 20 tested movement. Platforms vanished, hallways turned vertical, and gravity changed every few steps. I copied the direction called forward and attached it to myself. No matter how the rooms turned, forward remained wherever I wanted to go. I walked across ceilings, through falling staircases, and along the sides of spinning pillars without slowing. On floor 16, the path broke into 1,000 floating tiles. Only 10 were real. I stepped on a false tile. It vanished. I duplicated the instant before it disappeared, and repeated that instant under each foot. The tile kept beginning to vanish without completing the action. I crossed the entire room on a platform that existed only in unfinished moments. Floors 21 through 30 tested spell knowledge. Doors demanded elemental combinations. Statues asked magical questions by attacking with the wrong answers. A room filled with poisonous fog required a cleansing circle hidden inside a riddle. I did not solve the riddle. I duplicated the clean air inside my lungs and exhaled until the room became breathable. A statue asked which element defeated lightning. The expected answer was earth. I answered distance. Then I duplicated the space between the statue and its own lightning bolt. The attack traveled so far that it ran out of mana before leaving the statue's hand. The door opened, possibly from confusion. Rank 2 remained 1 floor ahead. Floors 31 through 40 contained monster packs. Each pack had a leader that strengthened the others. I could have attacked the leaders. Instead, I duplicated the strengthening signals and attached them to random furniture. Chairs became terrifying. Tables released battle cries. A coat rack gained enough speed to chase monsters around the room. On floor 37, a swarm of blade insects surrounded me. I copied the harmless dullness of the back edge of one blade and spread it across every insect. They became a cloud of metal spoons. I stacked them into a ladder and climbed to the exit. Floors 41 through 50 attacked the mind. One room stretched a second into what felt like a year. I duplicated my boredom until the illusion became bored with me and ended early. Another room filled with voices offering everything I wanted: wealth, power, respect, endless research, even a restored estate. I asked whether the restored estate came with visitors. The voices said yes. I walked away. Floor 50 created the perfect quiet life. I stood on the roof of my repaired home. The sun was warm. Bread rested on my chest. No academy existed. Lila was safe nearby. Nobody knew my name. For one dangerous moment, I wanted to stay. Then Illusion Lila walked into the yard without breaking anything. I knew immediately she was fake. I duplicated the sound of the real Lila shouting and released it into the peaceful scene. The illusion cracked from roof to sky. I stepped through the pieces and reached floor 51. Outside, my progress slowed for less than a minute. Rank 2 used that minute to reach floor 55. Lila watched the giant crystal from the festival plaza. Her own match had ended in victory, moving her to rank 43. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she shouted at my progress display as if I could hear her through the tower. I could. I duplicated the faint vibration of her voice traveling through the stone and brought it into my room. She called me lazy, threatened to throw away my emergency sausage, and said Adrian would already be on floor 100. That was excellent motivation. Floors 51 through 60 removed basic magical senses. Darkness swallowed light. Silence swallowed sound. Mana detectors showed false walls. I copied the certainty of the tower floor beneath my feet and used it as a guide. When the certainty ended, I turned. When it continued, I walked. On floor 58, the room removed direction itself. There was no up, down, left, or right. My body floated among 6 identical doors. I duplicated the pull of Lila's voice from outside. It gave me a direction the room did not control. I followed it and found the correct exit. Floors 61 through 70 limited mana. Each spell made the next one weaker. Rank 2 had prepared by using destruction magic in tiny amounts. I had another solution. I cast one basic spark. Before the tower weakened my next spell, I duplicated the first spark's unused potential. I did not cast a second spell. I kept reshaping copies of the first. The spark became a line, a net, a drill, a shield, a flock of burning fish, and a small sun that complained when I pushed it through a keyhole. I reached floor 70 without spending another unit of mana. Rank 2 was on floor 72. Floors 71 through 80 contained opponents made from the tower's old battle records. They were not copies of us or imitations of our moves. They were constructed fighters built from historical tactics, spear formations, elemental traps, moving fortresses, and coordinated spell squads. Each floor placed me against a different style. I defeated a fire formation by duplicating the cool air inside their helmets. I defeated a chain formation by copying the looseness of one knot. I defeated a moving fortress by duplicating its destination and placing that destination behind it. The fortress marched forward and arrived farther back every step until its own soldiers surrendered from exhaustion. Floor 80 contained 100 constructed mages casting one combined meteor spell. The ceiling opened. A burning rock larger than the tower fell toward me. I duplicated the meteor's dramatic appearance and removed it from the actual stone. The fire, smoke, and terrifying sound continued downward as an empty show. The real rock, now visually ordinary, was small enough to catch. I caught it. Then I placed all the copied drama onto one grain of dust and flicked it at the constructed army. A harmless speck crossed the room looking and sounding like the end of the world. Every construct raised maximum defense. While they blocked the illusion, I walked through the exit. I reached floor 81 at the same moment rank 2 reached floor 80. The giant crystal outside flashed. I had taken the lead. That was when rank 2 cheated. He carried a gate shard hidden inside his body. The tower had removed outside items, but the shard had been fused beneath his skin before the festival. It connected his version of the battle tower to mine. On floor 83, the wall split open. A monster from his floor came through, followed by another, then 10 more. He had destroyed the separation between our routes and redirected every challenge he faced into my tower. The Academy observers saw the progress crystals flicker, but they did not immediately understand what happened. Rank 2 began clearing empty floors while his monsters surrounded me. I understood. I also saw the opportunity. The gate shard created a two-way connection. He thought he had opened a drain. He had opened a door. I let the monsters attack. Crystal beasts charged, flying jaws dropped from the ceiling, and a giant wheel covered in eyes rolled through the room. I duplicated the path through the gate and attached it to every creature after it passed me. The monsters turned. They did not simply return to rank 2's current floor. The copied paths led to every floor he had skipped. His empty floor 84 filled with the challenge from 83. When he destroyed it, the remains fell through another gate and entered 85. Traps, beasts, and puzzles stacked together. A gravity room crashed into a fire room. A monster pack entered a silence chamber. A moving fortress appeared inside a hallway only 3 feet wide. Rank 2's progress stopped. Mine continued. He realized what I had done and entered the connection himself. He appeared on floor 88 directly behind me, covered in dust and fury. The tower voice warned that fighters were not permitted to attack across routes. He destroyed the speaking crystal. Then he attacked. Destruction magic spread from his hand. The air lost stability. The floor peeled into pieces. My duplicated positions vanished because the connection holding them together disappeared. He had the perfect power to fight me. Duplication required relationships, copy and original, action and result, place and distance. His magic erased relationships. He touched one of my copied sparks. The spark forgot it had ever come from fire and dissolved. He touched a duplicated step. The destination disconnected from the door. He moved closer, destroying every trick I placed between us. I retreated through floors 89 and 90. To the audience outside, both progress markers moved together. Students realized we were in the same route. Rowan ordered the tower opened, but the gate shard had sealed the external controls. Serena prepared to cut into the tower with vector magic. Lila ran toward the entrance. Inside, Rank 2 erased the floor beneath me. We fell into floor 91. The room contained an ocean suspended in the air. Water filled every direction without touching the walls. Massive shapes moved inside it. The floor challenge required crossing the ocean while avoiding pressure creatures that attack disturbances. Rank 2 destroyed the relationship between water and buoyancy. The entire ocean fell. Millions of gallons crashed toward the bottom of the tower. He expected the flood to crush me while his destruction field protected him. I did not stop the water. I duplicated the relationship he had missed. Water reflected light. One reflection became two. Two became four. And soon every drop reflected every other drop. The falling ocean turned into a sphere of blinding brightness. Rank 2 destroyed the light's connection to the water. That was what I wanted. The light separated and remained in place as a solid-looking ocean, while the real water became invisible. He stepped onto what he thought was the surface. There was nothing there. He fell through the false ocean and into the real invisible flood below. The pressure creatures followed disturbances. His destruction field tore through the water, creating the largest disturbance in the room. Every creature attacked him. He erased their attacks, but each act created more turbulence. The ocean became a storm around his body. I moved through the still spaces he left behind. At the exit, he destroyed the door's connection to the next floor. The doorway became a blank wall. I touched the wall and duplicated its connection to the previous floor instead. Then I reversed the copy. A connection pointing backward became a connection pointing forward. The door reopened. I entered floor 92. Rank 2 tore free of the ocean and followed. From there, our duel became part of every challenge. On floor 93, we fought while giant pendulums cut the room into moving slices. He erased the chains. I duplicated the pendulum's swing and turned the falling blades into a spinning staircase. On floor 95, living music attacked our hearts. He destroyed the link between sound and emotion. I copied the rhythm of his heartbeat and inserted it into the song. Every drumbeat pushed him backward. On floor 97, the room demanded a sacrifice of mana to open the exit. He tried to destroy the requirement. The door began collapsing with the entire floor. I duplicated the small amount of mana I had already spent and filled the lock with copies. On floor 99, there was nothing except one narrow bridge and a white void. Rank 2 caught me halfway across. He released his full destruction field. The bridge vanished behind him, beside him, and ahead of him. The relationship between my body and gravity began breaking. My disguise flickered. For one instant, my real dark hair and face appeared beneath Reed's gray features. Lila sawed on the outside crystal. The image vanished before she could understand. Rank 2 reached for my chest, planning to erase the connection between my mana and my body. I let him touch me, then I duplicated his attack's target. My body became one target. His own gate shard became another. The destruction field split. Half entered me, half entered the shard beneath his skin. I copied the harmless separation between my disguise and my real face, giving the destructive spell something easy to erase. The gray hair, poor posture, and forgettable features peeled away for a fraction of a second, absorbing the attack. The other half destroyed the gate shard's connection to Rank 2. The shard fell out as a black splinter of light. Every crossroute gate collapsed. The tower restored its normal boundaries. Rank 2 found himself standing in my route without authorization. Surrounded by recording crystals that had captured his hidden shard, his direct attacks, and his attempt to destroy the tower controls. He still tried to fight. I picked up the falling shard and duplicated its property of separation. Then I attached that property to his destruction magic. His power separated from his intention. Every time he tried to erase something, the spell chose a random harmless target. He pointed at me, and a loose thread disappeared from his sleeve. He attacked the bridge, and one shoelace vanished. He released everything, and his coat lost all its buttons. I tapped his forehead with the pebble from floor 1. I duplicated that tiny impact 99 times, one for every floor he had tried to skip. The impacts arrived in a line and knocked him backward across the bridge. He fell toward the white void. I caught him with a copied rope from floor 3 and tied him to the remains of the gate shard. The tower removed him from the route. He reappeared outside in front of guards, still bound, while the recording crystals replayed his attacks above the festival plaza. His rank dropped from the board. The guards took him away for endangering every student inside the tower. I remained on floor 99. The door to floor 100 opened. Beyond it waited a black sky, a silver platform, and a creature shaped like a dragon built from locked doors. Every scale was an entrance. Every tooth was a key. Its wings opened into hallways that extended beyond sight. The final tower guardian controlled access itself. Any attack sent toward it entered one door and returned from another. Any attempt to approach led back to the edge of the platform. The guardian roared. Thousands of doors opened across its body. Every spell ever used in the tower came out at once. Fire, stone, lightning, poison, chains, pressure, music, gravity, and the false meteor crossed the sky toward me. I held up the pebble, then I duplicated the one thing the guardian could not redirect. The fact that I had already arrived. I copied my completed journey through 99 floors and attached the result to the space behind the guardian. The tower accepted the proof of arrival. For one instant, I was both at the entrance and at the destination. I stepped out behind the dragon. Its attacks struck the empty doorway where I had been. I placed the pebble into the final keyhole at the center of its back. The pebble was not a key, so I duplicated the quality of every key I had seen in the tower and layered those qualities onto it. The stone became a master key made from nothing but remembered usefulness. I turned it. Every door on the dragon opened inward. The creature folded through itself. Wings entered scales. Teeth entered hallways. The enormous guardian collapsed into one ordinary wooden door standing on the silver platform. I opened it. Sunlight entered the tower. The voice announced that floor 100 had been cleared. The battle tower unfolded above the academy like a giant flower. I stepped onto the festival platform while thousands of students shouted. The ranking board moved me to rank 2. Only Serena remained above me. Serena was waiting at the top of the open tower. She stood on a floating circle above the festival plaza while the academy cheered below. The sun was setting behind her. Golden light passed through the white tower and turned every window into fire. The rank board displayed her name at 1, and mine at 2. She asked whether I needed rest. I had climbed 100 floors, fought a cheater, folded a dragon into a door, and spent my last emergency sausage saving a stranger from floor 64. I said no, that was a lie, but it sounded better. The final arena rose from the center of the academy. 7 floating rings lifted into the sky, each larger than the one above it. Waterfalls flowed between them without falling. Thousands of small crystal platforms surrounded the battlefield for spectators. Rowan reinforced the barriers. Lila pushed through the crowd until she reached the closest platform. She stared at me the entire time. The moment my disguise had flickered inside the battle tower remained in her mind. I could tell by the way she narrowed her eyes. She had seen dark hair beneath Reed's gray hair. She had seen a face that looked almost familiar. Then someone nearby said Adrian would probably be taller. Lila nodded. My secret survived another minute. Serena stepped onto the highest ring. I joined her. She had promised to keep my identity hidden. I had promised not to pretend our duel was an accident. Neither of us needed more words. The referee raised one hand. The duel began. Serena moved a finger. The arena threw me into the sky. She had changed the direction of gravity beneath my feet. Instead of falling down, I fell upward. The 7 rings shrank below me. Clouds rushed closer. The barrier extended to keep me inside, but she redirected that too, turning its curved surface into a tunnel that accelerated my flight. I duplicated the gravity pulling me upward and reversed one copy. The 2 forces balanced. I stopped in the clouds. Serena redirected the upward gravity sideways. I shot across the sky. I copied my position every 100 feet and left a line of reeds behind me. Serena changed the direction of each copy's momentum. They scattered like cards in wind, diving toward the rings from every angle. She knew only one was current. Instead of searching, she redirected all of them toward the same point. My copied positions collided around me. The impact became real because each held one moment of movement. I was hit by my own previous locations and launched downward. Serena waited on the highest ring. I twisted in the air, duplicated the softness of a cloud, and placed it on the arena. The stone became springy. I hit the ring, sank into it, and bounced back toward her. I threw the pebble. She turned its vector. The pebble curved around her and came back at my face. I duplicated the curve. One pebble path became a spiral of invisible motion around Serena. I threw nothing else, but the copied paths pulled dust, light, and loose mana into orbit. A glowing cyclone formed. Serena reversed every path. The cyclone turned inside out and expanded across the arena. I copied the still center of the storm and stepped into it. She redirected the center itself. Stillness shot toward the edge, carrying me with it. I crossed the ring, passed through a waterfall, and emerged soaked on a lower platform. The audience roared. Serena had not taken one step. I warmed my coat with a basic fire spell. She redirected the heat away from me. The fire froze. I shook the ice from my sleeve and smiled. Finally, someone was making basic magic difficult. I raised both hands and released 10 wind blades. Serena sent them back. I duplicated their return paths and sent them forward again. She redirected those. The blades crossed the arena hundreds of times, gaining copied motion with each pass. Soon glowing lines formed a web between the rings. Serena walked through it. Every blade curved away from her body. I made the web denser. She redirected it into a giant sphere and dropped it on me. I duplicated the gaps between the blades, expanded them, and stepped through. She turned the expanding gaps sideways. Space opened beneath me like sliding doors. I fell through one ring, then another. Waterfalls changed direction and struck from above, below, and both sides. Serena controlled every moving thing in the arena, so I gave her too many moving things. I touched one waterfall and duplicated the drops. Thousands became millions. Millions became a silver ocean hanging in the sky. Every drop fell in a slightly different direction. I copied the reflections inside them, creating suns, rings, clouds, and spectators in every surface. The arena disappeared inside a universe of water. Serena spread her hands. Every drop stopped. The suspended ocean became a crystal globe around us. Then she redirected all the water outward. The globe exploded. A circular wave crossed the academy sky. Rowan strengthened the barriers. Students watched through walls of rushing water as the floating rings shook. I remained at the center, dry. Before the explosion, I had duplicated the condition of not being touched and attached it to my coat. Water curved around me. Serena saw that and redirected the dry path itself. The empty tunnel bent, wrapped around my body, and squeezed. Air pressure locked my arms. She pulled every vector toward my chest. The floating rings shifted. Broken droplets, dust, heat, sound, and mana all accelerated toward me. I became the center of a growing storm. If I resisted with force, she would redirect it inward. If I moved, she would control the movement. I did neither. I duplicated the absence of a vector. 0 direction, 0 speed, 0 pull. I placed the copied zeros between the incoming forces. The storm did not stop. It lost agreement. Dust moved without direction. Sound arrived without traveling. Water accelerated while remaining still. Serena's clean vector lines became tangled in thousands of points that led nowhere. For the first time, she stepped back. I released the copied zeros. All the confused movement returned at once. The storm expanded in a perfect ring. Serena redirected most of it into the sky, but one pulse struck the arena. The highest platform broke into 6 pieces. We landed on different fragments. She smiled. Then she used both hands. The Academy mountain moved. Not the whole mountain. She redirected the mountain's tiny natural motion through the ground and concentrated it beneath the arena. A column of stone rose from below, lifting the floating rings higher. The battlefield climbed above the clouds. The city vanished beneath white mist. Serena turned moonlight downward before the moon had fully risen. A pale beam cut through the evening sky. She redirected the speed of falling dust into the light, giving it physical force. The beam struck like a solid blade. I duplicated the shadow behind the moonlight and used it as a shield. Light hit darkness. The collision split the clouds from horizon to horizon. She rotated the beam. I copied its edge. Silver arcs crossed the sky. I duplicated the sound of each collision and shaped it into enormous hands that caught the next attacks. Serena redirected the hands into one another. Thunder punched thunder. The shock waves formed rings visible above the entire region. Students far below could no longer see us directly. The arena crystals projected our fight across every tower. Lila stood beneath the image with both fists clenched. She was no longer cheering. She was studying my movements. I had taught her those movements at home. The small turn of my wrist before changing distance. The habit of touching my thumb to my middle finger before duplicating abstract qualities. The way I leaned back when pretending not to care. Recognition approached her slowly. Then the festival alarms began. A black line appeared across the western sky. At first, it looked like a storm. Then wings unfolded inside it. The criminal group from the invisible ship had not all been captured. A second vessel rose from the clouds, larger than the first and built around the skeleton of a flying leviathan. Metal engines replaced parts of its body. Chains connected its wings to a control deck filled with masked attackers. The creature carried a suppression crystal in its chest and hundreds of stolen monster cores along its spine. They had come for the permanent ring fragment. I still carried it inside my coat. The criminals had tracked the fragment's mana after I used duplication in the battle tower. They aimed the Leviathan directly at the rank arena, where the Academy's strongest fighters were isolated above the clouds. Serena saw the vessel. The duel did not officially stop. Neither of us cared. The Leviathan opened its mouth and released a gray suppression wave. The beam erased weak spells as it crossed the sky. Floating arena rings lost power. Barriers failed. Spectator platforms began falling toward the Academy. Serena redirected gravity under the spectators. I duplicated the position of every platform before it dropped and restored them to those positions. Thousands of students stopped in midair. The criminals fired chains at me. They had learned from the first ship. These chains ignored false copies and followed the ancient ring's signal. They wrapped around my coat and pulled me toward the Leviathan. I let them. Serena changed the chain's direction, but I shook my head. I wanted the attackers to believe they had caught me. The chains dragged me through the clouds and onto the Leviathan's skull. Masked criminals surrounded me. The leader of this group held a control rod connected to the creature's spine. He demanded the fragment. I reached into my coat. I handed him the broken permanent ring. Serena landed on the Leviathan's wing behind them. She looked surprised. The criminal leader laughed and inserted the fragment into the control rod. The ring activated. The stolen monster cores along the Leviathan's back began duplicating. That was their plan. One fire core would become hundreds. One gravity core would become an army of engines. One suppression crystal would cover the Academy. They intended to turn the dead Leviathan into a flying fortress that produced endless power. The fragment they inserted was real. That was the trap. The ring did not create obedient copies. It copied whatever quality was strongest at the moment of activation. I had filled it with one quality before handing it over. Failure. I duplicated the final crack from the underground city, the overload in the storage vault, the broken control network, and every moment the ring had failed to function correctly. Those failures slept inside the fragment like folded paper. The criminal leader activated it. Failure became permanent. The control rod cracked. Every monster core produced copies that failed in different ways. Fire cores created cold sparks. Flight cores pulled sideways. Suppression crystals weakened one another. Gravity engines forgot which direction held the ground. The Leviathan rolled upside down. Criminals fell toward the clouds. Serena redirected them back onto the creature so none escaped. I duplicated the metal chains and wrapped each attacker in 10 copies. The more they struggled, the more copied tension tightened around them. The leader tore the fragment from the rod and attacked me with it. Permanent duplication energy covered his arm. Every punch created dozens of lasting after impacts. He swung once. A wall of force crossed the skull. I allowed the first impact to strike my palm. Then I duplicated the direction of his arm at the moment he pulled it back. All the permanent after impacts followed that direction. His own attack reversed. Dozens of punches struck him at once and launched him across the deck. Serena redirected his flight into a cage made from the Leviathan's ribs. The remaining criminals activated the stolen cores manually. Fire dragons rose from the left wing. Black lightning covered the right. A gravity sphere formed above the spine. The suppression wave expanded toward the Academy again. I looked at Serena. She redirected every attack toward me. The criminals cheered, thinking she had betrayed the Academy. I understood immediately. She was giving me everything at once. I opened both hands. Fire, lightning, gravity, suppression, wind, and the Leviathan's remaining motion converged on my body. Before they touched, I duplicated their completed result, destruction. Then I removed the target. I placed that copied result inside the criminal's empty second ship. The vessel had remained hidden behind the Leviathan, waiting to collect survivors and stolen artifacts. It had not fired. It had not yet entered the battle. Suddenly, every attack's destructive result appeared inside it without traveling through the space between. The hidden ship lit up from within. Its engines burst. Its weapons melted. Its invisibility barrier turned solid and trapped the crew inside a transparent shell. The vessel began falling. Serena redirected its fall toward the city detention fortress. I copied the soft landing from the first ship. The second vessel descended gently into the same courtyard as the first, stacking itself on top like a badly placed box. Guards surrounded it before the doors opened. Every criminal on the Leviathan remained bound in duplicated chains. Serena turned the creature's downward momentum toward the fortress too. The massive skeleton drifted through the sky and landed around the two ships like a cage. The attackers had come to steal one broken ring. They delivered themselves, both vessels, every stolen core, and a flying leviathan directly to detention. Lila watched from the academy below. She pointed at the descending criminals and shouted that Reed had learned another trick from Adrian. The recognition moving through her mind became lost behind pride again. I returned the broken ring fragment to my coat. Serena and I stood on the remaining arena ring above the clouds. The festival crystals were still recording. The referee, far below, had never ended the duel. Serena asked whether I was ready to continue. I said I had hoped the criminal attack counted as a break. She attacked before I finished. Every remaining fragment of the arena moved toward me. Stone rings, broken barriers, water drops, and pieces of cloud accelerated from all directions. Serena stood at the center of a vector constellation. Silver lines connected her to everything in the sky. I created 10,000 copies of the pebble. She redirected them. I made 10,000 more. She sent those back too. Soon a storm of gray stones orbited the battlefield, each moving along a path she controlled. I added copied leaves, chalk, doors, sausages, spoons, feathers, soap bubbles, and the visual appearance of giant meteors. Every trick from my climb through the academy returned at once. Serena controlled all of it. She turned my ridiculous army into a spiral and aimed the point at my chest. I duplicated myself across every pebble's destination. Thousands of reeds appeared in the sky. Serena redirected each destination toward the real me. Thousands of my own copied positions rushed inward. That was exactly what I wanted. Every false position carried one completed action. I had already touched the target. As the copies converged, I changed their target from myself to the silver vector lines around Serena. 10,000 completed touches appeared across her magic at once. I did not push the lines. I did not pull them. I simply duplicated the result of contact and used each touch to tie one vector to another. Forward connected to backward. Up connected to sideways. Acceleration connected to stillness. Gravity connected to the orbit of a soap bubble. Serena's perfect constellation became a knot. She pulled one line. A pebble flew nowhere. She redirected gravity. A feather became heavy. She sent momentum toward me. A spoon spun around the moonlight. For the first time since the duel began, her power did not obey cleanly. She cut every vector line at once. The entire storm became free. 10,000 objects, copied positions, false meteors, and broken arena pieces hung motionless around us. Serena stood on empty air. I stood 50 feet away. She raised one hand to create a new vector. I tapped the air in front of me. Then I duplicated the completed impact after the tap. The impact appeared against her shoulder without crossing the distance. There was no moving attack to redirect. She slid backward one step. I tapped again. A second pathless impact appeared beneath her foot. She rose into the air. I tapped a third time. The impact stopped an inch from her chest. I held the copied result without applying it. Serena looked at the invisible strike. She understood that I could place it anywhere. No direction, no travel, no vector between cause and result. She could continue fighting, but the next impact could end the duel before her magic had something to turn. She lowered her hand, then she surrendered. The motionless storm around us fell. I duplicated the softness of a feather across everything. Pebbles, stone rings, doors, spoons, and false meteors drifted toward the academy like strange snow. Serena and I landed on the highest remaining platform. The ranking board flashed. Her name moved to 2. Reed moved to 1. The academy became louder than the underground serpent, the forest explosion, and Lila discovering an unattended dessert table combined. Students filled the bridges. Professors lit the towers. The festival crystals projected my poor gray coat across the city. The Bottle King song began again, now with several new verses about chalk, doors, and sausage magic. I had entered the academy as rank 999. I had planned to remain unnoticed. 9 days later, I stood at rank 1 while pieces of a duplicated meteor floated behind me. It was the worst quiet life strategy ever created. Lila reached the platform by freezing a waterfall and running up it. She stopped in front of me, breathing hard. For a moment, she did not speak. She reached toward my gray hair. My disguise had cracked during the final battle. One dark strand showed beneath the copied color. Her fingers almost touched it. Then I duplicated the gray strand beside it and covered the mistake. She narrowed her eyes. She asked whether we had met before the academy. I said I had seen her standing on a dining table. She said earlier than that. I told her she probably remembered someone more impressive. That answer worked too well. She nodded and said I did resemble Adrian slightly when viewed from a distance, in poor light, while tired. Serena turned away to hide a smile. Rowan suddenly became interested in the broken arena floor. Lila grabbed my shoulders and announced that becoming rank 1 did not mean I was stronger than her brother. I asked what rank Adrian held. She said he was above rankings. I asked whether he had ever defeated Serena. She said he had probably defeated people stronger than Serena while sleeping. Serena looked at me. I looked at the clouds. Lila then declared that Reed would make an acceptable assistant to Adrian when he finally arrived. I had become the strongest student in the academy and earned a promotion to my own assistant. That evening, the academy repaired the festival plaza. The captured criminals remained in the detention fortress with both ships and the Leviathan wrapped around them. The stolen creatures were returned. The permanent ring fragment was sealed inside a new chamber under Rowan's watch, though I quietly kept a copy of its failure in case anyone tried to activate it again. Damon watched the final ranking projection from a fortress window. When he saw Reed at rank 1, he finally understood that every trap he had created had only pushed me higher. He sat down, stared at the wall, and stopped speaking. Lila's rank ended at 31 after the festival. She had passed her examination, captured thieves, won her own duels, and protected students during the Leviathan attack by redirecting falling platforms with the control methods I taught her. Her reputation no longer depended on my research. Students still called her Adrian's sister. Now they also called her dangerous. She liked the second title more. I returned to the roof of our ruined estate for one night. The duplicate I had left there was still sleeping with bread on its chest. It had survived rain, birds, and part of the western tower falling on it. I absorbed the copy and received all its simple memories at once. Most of them involved clouds. I lay back beneath the stars and considered staying home. Lila was safe. Damon was confined. The criminal group had lost its ships, creatures, artifacts, and leaders. Serena knew my identity but kept it secret. Rowan understood why I hid. The academy ranked Reed first, not Adrian. For the first time since this began, I could disappear. Then the family seal in my pocket grew warm. A silver line crossed the sky. Far beyond the academy mountain, 3 lights appeared above the horizon. They were not stars. They were towers, enormous and distant, rising from places that had been hidden for centuries. The broken underground city had sent a pulse through the old duplication network when Damon activated the permanent ring. My battle with Serena had carried that pulse farther. 1 tower remained still. 1 sank beneath the clouds. The third began moving toward the academy. A small door appeared on the roof beside me. It was made from black stone and covered in my family symbol. There was no wall around it, no building, just a door standing under the stars. A message burned across the surface. It said the remaining vault had recognized Adrian and requested entry. Behind the door, something knocked once, then twice. Then Lila climbed through the broken roof carrying 2 academy bags. She announced that rank 1 students were required to live on campus, so she had come to drag Reed back before morning. She saw the mysterious door, the glowing family seal, and the distant moving tower. Her eyes became brighter with every impossible detail. She said Adrian must have left another adventure for her. I looked at the door. I looked at my sister. Then I looked at the peaceful roof I had spent 3 years protecting from excitement. The knocking came again, hard enough to shake the estate. I stood, pulled the gray disguise over my face, and picked up the last loaf of bread. Lila asked why a useless transfer student looked so calm. I opened the door. Cold silver light poured across the roof, revealing an endless staircase leading into the moving tower. I told her it was probably another street trick. Then we stepped through together, while far behind us the academy's rank board still displayed Reed at number 1, and the name Adrian remained exactly where I wanted it. Hidden.